Welcome to the SCAR Foresight Conference. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being with us. So this conference is around the fifth SCAR Foresight exercise on natural resources and food systems transition towards a safe and just operating space. Sorry for the slight delay in the agenda, but we are going to keep up time. So this conference is co-organized by the European Commission and the German presidency of the EU. I am Pascal Bergeret. I am director of the Mediterranean Agronomic Institute in Montpellier, France, and I am also the co-chair of the SCAR-ACI Strategic Working Group. I will be moderating this conference. Thank you again for being with us. So we'll have a first series of welcoming address and then another sequence on presenting the results of this foresight exercise. And after that, we'll have a short moment for discussion. So this conference is held in a webinar mode. That means that only the scheduled speakers will be able to use their microphone and their camera. All the other participants are encouraged to use the chat function. You can use the chat function to ask questions, to raise comments, and these will be conveyed to the speakers. Also, another recommendation, it's easier if you keep your screen display on the focus mode so that you will have the speaking person full screen, and it will be easier for everybody. So having said that, without further delay, I would like now to announce that we have a recorded message for a welcome address by Julia Klöckner, the German Federal Minister of Food and Agriculture, who is going to have a welcome address for us.
Ladies and gentlemen, I extend a warm welcome to you. Also on behalf of my colleague, Anja Karliczek, Federal Minister for Education and Research. Whether it is about our forests, new findings in animal welfare, or the diet of the future, the Standing Committee on Agricultural Research is the place where it all comes together. You are coordinating research policy in Europe and think ahead. This is key when dealing with our topics especially, because the debates on agri-food policy issues are often highly emotional. Research can help identify facts and thus objectify debates. And research points out solutions that we urgently need. Your committee has provided key impetus in agricultural research. Especially your foresight studies are well known. They are regarded as essential documents and pillars for strategic work and research questions. Your committee is set to play an important role in the future too, especially when it comes to designing upcoming research partnerships. Here, the countries can develop joint ideas and coherent positions. It was therefore especially important to me to strengthen your committee during our EU Council presidency. This is why we took part in the preparations for a working group on agroecology. You will be able to play a greater role in research planning under Horizon Europe. Your conference today will focus on the current fifth foresight study. Germany, namely our Federal Office for Agriculture and Food, chairs the Foresight Group. This group has summarized the results of the study and will translate them into a declaration today, the so-called Berlin Declaration. This declaration is to be presented to the European Council. The study highlights that it will be essential to reinforce diversity and the circular economy, and to make primary production, that is crop production and animal husbandry, more robust. We must also make food systems more sustainable and healthy, and pay attention to resource protection and waste prevention. All of this will provide inspiration for research under the new Horizon Europe program. Here, the European Union will provide more concrete support for innovations over the next 7 years. However, It is not only important to us to develop innovative solutions, but also to translate them into real life. And we want to and must work together on this. On this note, I'm delighted with a message from my Portuguese colleague, Maria. I wish you all an interesting and successful conference. See you soon and stay healthy.
Well, that was the address by the German minister. And now we have another address still recorded by the Portuguese Minister of Agriculture, Maria do Céu Antunes. So if we can have this recorded message, please, with the video on screen, that would be excellent. Thank you very much.
É com enorme satisfação que estou presente nesta conferência, onde teremos a oportunidade de assistir à apresentação e à reflexão sobre o futuro da investigação agrária. Quero expressar a minha satisfação por estar presente nesta sessão de abertura com a minha colega e amiga Júlia, com quem tenho trabalhado desde há vários meses a esta parte, num contexto difícil de confinamento, mas de grande proximidade, nomeadamente afetiva. Este é um momento de transição da presidência da União Europeia e quero aproveitar este ato para manifestar o meu apreço pelo trabalho desenvolvido pela presidência alemã, com uma tónica muito forte no conhecimento, na inovação e na transição digital, como está bem patente nesta conferência. É um legado marcante sobre o qual nos iremos empenhar para dar o devido seguimento durante a presidência portuguesa. Quero manifestar o meu apreço pelo trabalho desenvolvido pelo SCAR, que tem um trabalho muito meritório e de elevada responsabilidade junto à Comissão Europeia em matéria de investigação em agricultura. Todo o trabalho e apoio dado ao SCAR irá prosseguir numa fase exigente de transição entre quadros de programação plurianuais e de implementação do programa de recuperação. Estamos a viver um período de transição acelerado, marcado por desafios e necessidades de respostas que já estavam presentes, mas que se revelaram mais críticos ou mais sensíveis com a atual crise pandémica. O primeiro aspecto é a importância da alimentação para a nossa saúde e bem-estar. Ainda temos demasiados casos de fome no mundo, um flagelo em crescimento, que é a obesidade e o excesso de peso, e um caminho a percorrer rumo a uma alimentação mais saudável, nutricionalmente mais equilibrada e associada a um sistema alimentar sustentável. Enfrentamos também o grande desafio das alterações climáticas, da limitação planetária dos recursos, da degradação dos solos agrícolas e da perda de biodiversidade. São desafios que temos de encontrar soluções, porque temos a responsabilidade de entregar a agricultura e o nosso planeta às próximas gerações sem comprometer o seu direito ao bem-estar. A ciência e a investigação são cada vez mais importantes para o crescimento económico e para o desenvolvimento humano. Estamos em Portugal prontos para criar um ambiente mais propício à investigação, à ciência e à inovação em prol de uma solução para estes problemas. Queremos o conhecimento ao serviço da prática agrícola, da forma a que esta seja cada vez mais um setor que faz parte de uma solução para os grandes desafios que enfrentamos. A área temática dos solos e da alimentação é uma das 5 missões do Horizonte Europa, um programa ambicioso, mas fundamental para podermos prosseguir o rumo relativo a uma transição efetiva que é muito exigente, não apenas com o empenho político, mas também no aprofundamento do conhecimento científico. A presidência portuguesa do Conselho da Europa está empenhada na articulação entre as políticas europeias do Pacto Ecológico e da preservação da biodiversidade, com os objetivos delineados nesta apresentação. Queremos uma ação cada vez mais eficaz, tecnológica e inovadora em busca destas metas no âmbito da União Europeia. Os desafios que temos pela frente são ambiciosos e muito exigentes, mas estou certa que estamos no rumo concreto e que, com o contributo de todos e de todas que estamos a dar, vamos corresponder às necessidades dos cidadãos e estamos a criar condições para um futuro melhor. Quero terminar desejando uma boa sessão de trabalhos, que seja frutuosa, e aguardamos os auspiciosos resultados. Muito obrigada.
Well, we have to thank both ministers for addressing us, the minister from the current presidency, Germany, and of the incoming presidency, Portugal. So we are now going to carry on with the agenda. And the next sequence is about the foresight exercise itself. So we'll have 3 presentations. After the 3 presentations, there will be some discussion possible. So please use the chat function. Don't hesitate to raise questions and to raise comments. And then during the discussion time, we can convey them to the speakers and have as an interactive process as we can. After, we'll have a pause and we'll have a panel discussion after the pause. And this will be another opportunity for interaction with the panelists. The panelists are representatives of some member states. So without further delay, I would like to start the next sequence by giving the floor to Urs Niggli. Urs Niggli will give us the keynote address on transitions. He is a member of the UN Food System Summit Science Group, and he can also introduce himself more completely if he likes. Anyway, Urs Niggli, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Pascal. It's a great honor to talk about transition or transformation towards sustainable food and farming system. But please do not expect me to solve the most challenging question of agricultural research, the question of how to organize transition within the next 15 minutes. So it will give me only the opportunity for some anecdotal evidence. So the contents of my speech will be the direction of transformation. I will showcase the case study organic agriculture, what can be learned, and then I will talk about how transition processes can be triggered or accelerated. I hope that you. So basically, from the global perspective, in the preparation of the United Nations Food System Summit 2021, there is one overarching topic: boost nature positive production, and we have given a definition to this nature positive production. And nature positive production relies on 3 pillars. One is protect natural systems from new conversions for food production, meaning that we need to avoid telecoupling, meaning exporting environmental effects by extensifying production and making production more sustainable in other parts of the world. The second and most important pillar is the sustainable management of existing food production systems. And the third pillar is to restore and rehabilitate degraded systems for food production and ecosystem services. Relying on these 3 pillars, we want to increase global productivity and making it more sustainable. We see different approaches to sustainability, and you can see here it's a wide range of what we look at as being part of the solution of nature positive production. This goes from high-tech solution like minimum or no-till production system, down to successional agroforestry system, agroecological practices, and so on. And you see what we are looking for. We are looking for the best mix between public and private goods on the one hand, and the best mix between technology and traditional knowledge on the other hand. And this might be already the first step towards transition to become a little bit more relaxed in the way we discuss about the future, because it's not all black and white. The solution lies in solving the trade-offs we are facing. And what is meanwhile from scientific literature very clear is that sustainable agriculture ultimately and only depends on sustainable nutrition. There are a number of scientific publications dealing with that. The latest from Klöckner in Nature, bending the curve for terrestrial biodiversity needs an integrated strategy. And the conclusion from all these is that we can only come to sustainable farming systems by combining sustainable farming systems with sustainable nutrition, meaning producing less cereal concentrate for livestock on arable land, less meat consumption, less food waste, higher proportion of plant-based protein, and roughage-based exploitation of permanent grassland with ruminants, meaning that we really, the goal of the transition is really a very fundamental we have to solve in the next future. In addition to that, the European Commission has formulated some goals in the farm to fork and the biodiversity strategy, and the aim is to transform conventional farming system by reducing the dependency on farm inputs like pesticides, fertilizer, antimicrobial substances, and also by tripling the organic farmland area up to 25% up to 2030. Looking at the consequences of this, on the organic side, we see that these targets for the production is an incredible increase of the growth rate for organic farms in Europe, a growth rate we have never seen in the past, and the consequences on the market growth is also tremendous. This is only a forecast from existing figures from FIBL. But there are also consequences for conventional agriculture to become less dependent on pesticide, off-farm fertilizer, and so on. There is a redesign of farming system needed. Elements of organic agriculture will become reintegrated again, like wider crop rotation, promotion of higher on-farm and landscape diversity, and so on, down to circular economy for food production and consumption. So also here we see the consequences of the farm to fork, and the biodiversity strategy goals are a complete redesign of farming system depending on a transition of farmers and also other stakeholders. At the moment, we see a lot of new activities coming up. So new initiatives like the Alliance towards a chemical pesticide-free agriculture of the most important state research institute in Europe. So scientific community has already reacted to that. We also see the EU partnership, Agroecology and Living Labs. I think such partnerships are a crucial instrument, a crucial tool for transition, because this allows to combine the creativity, the activity of scientists, of farmers, and of farm advisor. And there are also ideas around of green labeling of food, so which could become uh, uh, gives a lot of synergy with organic agriculture, but could also be a competition, because organic food will become quite um, uh, uh, in growing amounts in the next years to come. So if we look at the case study for transition of organic agriculture, we see that it has started extremely slow over decades of years, and it has only accelerated in the last few years. So basically, one can say that transition, also in success stories, take a lot of time. Meanwhile, we see the success of it. There are a few countries with more than 20% of organic land area, so it is out of the niche. It's becoming mainstream. What we see, and this has always astonished me, that what is very typical about organic farming is that all the actors have always had a different mindset. This is characterized here in the publication of Boyce and Dunlop from 1990. So if we compare these two mindsets of all actors, from science to farmers, from farm advisor to business people, there has always been a specific mindset, like decentralization and not centralization, limitation, temperance against exploitation, harmony with nature, and against domination of nature. And I think this is very typical for a very successful movement, because all people being active, including scientists, are bound to the same mindset, and this in a way gives conviction, and this gives strength for transition. The success factors of organic agriculture are: it has been consumer driven, it is easy to understand and well guided for the farmers, well guided to join. It is a surprisingly good mix of private and public goods. It has clear goals. As already mentioned, there is a joint mindset of all the actors behind. The potential for profiling on the marketplace is huge, and organic has become a buzzword for almost everything you can imagine, including technology critics. So these are the success factors of what can be learned. I think for future transitions, we need to understand the lock-ins preventing farmers, but also scientists, they are in the same situation from transitions. So there are structural and institutional lock-ins, economic lock-ins, intellectual lock-ins, societal lock-ins, and technological lock-ins. And all these lock-ins are very relevant, and that's the reason why farmers, but also scientists and business people and policymakers are often quite reluctant to change anything. Without having understood that, I do not think that we can talk about transition. And what is also important, I try to speed up, is that an accelerated scientific progress in order to support the transition is utmost important, because if production techniques is too complicated, too time consuming, too complicated to understand, it won't be mainstream. There are a few good examples to give. For instance, this trichogramma, the polyphagous wasp against corn borer. They had been existed for 20-25 years. The application was made by hand with pieces of cardboards, very time consuming, and in the last 5, 6, 7 years, completely new methods for the application with drones has been developed, and since then it is a biological method which is easy to apply, time saving, and is easy to mainstream. So this kind of technology and also science behind is crucial for the transition towards environmental friendly sustainable farming system. And another example is, for instance, the control of aphids in apple orchards. A lot of research has been invested into indirect control via promoting wildflowers, pollen, and beneficial insects, and everything was scientifically solved, but the real progress came with an easy to apply product, the neem extract, which was invested about 16, 18 years ago, and since then biological aphids control has been established. Coming to the conclusions, we need some game changers. So I think that without full cost accounting, a transition towards sustainable farming systems and nature positive production might become very difficult. The taxing of the inputs, which distort the prices and the competition, might also easy to develop approach. The role of young influencers for sustainable farming could play a role. We need to have this link with these people, because they are convincing for new generation, and they can have an influence on the education. New and very ambitious action plans for sustainability are needed, and maybe the VIT reduction for sustainable food based on a sustainable Nutri-Score might be a solution. Consequently, applying the circular economy, and also to use the money within the common agricultural policy to support public goods instead to pure income support. And there is one new publication of Pinheiro showing that globally these eco schemes, this public money for public goods, is the most important driver for sustainability all over the planet. Thanks a lot for your attention.
Thank you very much, Urs, for this excellent keynote address. I think it's a good building block for the next part of our conference, and the mention of the results of the Foresight exercise. I really appreciated that presentation and the way you explained we are in a system, in a complex system from agriculture to nutrition. It's really food systems that we are dealing with. And I really appreciated the fact that you really emphasized the term of redesign. It's a redesign that is needed, and transition leading to redesigns are really needed. The idea of having the same mindsets among stakeholders is also very important, and it recalls one of the important considerations of the foresight exercise about shared vision. And that's a very good introduction to the rest of the discussion. You really emphasize the factor of success of this transition toward organic agriculture and what the conditions were to explain this success. That was very enlightening. Of course, the role of research was also underlined by you. The role of research and the conditions for research to be effective and impacting. It's not only research, it's also the way it is done and the simplicity of adoption of its results. And then the last slide on the game changers is really crucial. And the emphasis on the youngsters also is evidently important. So thank you very much, Urs, for all that. Please stay with us if you can, because we'll have a discussion after the two next presentations, and I hope we'll have in the chat some questions and some comments to enliven the discussion. But without further delay, now I would like to announce the next presentation. It's about the foresight exercise itself, and this presentation will be given by the foresight experts, some of the foresight experts who have contributed to it, and namely the chair of the Foresight Experts Group, Gianluca Brunori. Thank you very much, Gianluca, for being with us today. And also, if he is with us, Sébastien Treyer will also contribute to that presentation if he joins us. So, Gianluca, you have the floor, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pascal. Thank you very much. Thank you for the organizers. First of all, I would like to highlight that this foresight exercise I'm going to present is the outcome of a co-construction process based on intense interaction between the SCAR Foresight Task Force, the EU Commission, more than 50 stakeholders, and the scientific committee. The experts have provided the state of art of a number of research fields and orchestrated the process. And this is the occasion for me to thank all the participants to the process, and especially to the other experts. So what is our report about? We were asked by SCAR to figure out what kind of research would be needed to contribute to achieve a safe and just operating space. And as you know, the concept of operating space is based on the idea that to maintain the stability of a system, it is necessary to keep under control some indicators, as we do with our body when we control our temperature. And these indicators don't have to trespass given thresholds. So in the safe and just operating space, these indicators are both biophysical and social, and they are broadly defined by the climate agreements and by the Agenda 2030. So these are our, let's say, limits and the identification of indicators of our activity.
Yes? Gianluca, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we can't see the slides. There is something wrong with the screen sharing. Maybe if you can try again, sorry for that.
Can you ask? Yes, I don't see it. Yes.
Maybe if you try again.
I'll try again. Yes. Can you see it now?
Not yet. Ah, yes, now it's okay. We can see something, but it's not, there is a screen and okay. If you put it on slide, that's good. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. So I was saying that our mandate was related to COP21 and SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, that identify, let's say, the contours of our safe and just operating space. But during our work, we also had this novelty in the political system, which is the Green Deal, on which everybody are now debating. And so we incorporated also the insights from this important policy document. But given that the desired future was already set, and our mandate was to analyze the current situation and see what are the possible pathways to achieve this desired future. So our attention is concentrating on the transition. What does imply how to go there? And this brings to the need to identify the drivers, the barriers, the trade-offs that might characterize the pathways towards the future. So the first task we accomplished was to break down these broader goals that are set at global level at temporal and spatial scale. So we try to identify what are the targets to be achieved at European level in order to achieve these broader goals in 2050. And so, as you can see, these are the targets of the biophysical, let's say, boundaries, and are very much similar to the ones that are already contained into the Green Deal, but the time horizon is different. And as you can see, they are very radical, let's say, targets, but grounded into the literature, in the scientific literature. But at the same time, we had to identify the just operating space. And in that case, we have to identify 5 indicators, social standards, which are reachable at European level. Nutrition for all, no gender discrimination, fair remuneration of farmers' works, farm animals treated according to stringent welfare standards, and access to internet for all in rural areas. So this was the first step, identifying the target. And then we identified also the mechanisms to meet these targets. So we divided our report, and you can see it in the report, the research pathways that we think it's necessary to achieve these desired goals, cross-cutting priorities, and then delivery mechanisms. First of all, transitions, the pathways. We have identified 3 pathways that concur to the achievement of a safe and just operating space. The first one is sustainable diets for all. The second one is full circularity of the bioeconomy. And the third one is increasing biological and socioeconomic diversity. Because also research needs a pathway, because as it has already explained very well Urs Niggli before, we have to produce new knowledge, and this implies looking for and also learning new paradigms, new methods, new infrastructure, and also we need the new actors, and also this changes require time. So also for research, a pathway is needed. We have identified for each pathway questions, main messages, and research priority. For the sake of synthesis, I will just report here the questions. And the 3 big questions, so general questions that generate a lot of other questions, are how to make food system coherent with sustainable consumption. What can agriculture, fishery, and forestry do to produce more nutrition, eco-friendly food? And how can we use social and behavioral sciences to guide citizens to eat better, smarter, and greener? So you can see that here we put together a supply oriented approach with a demand-oriented approach, in the conviction that a supply and demand should concur to obtain sustainable diets. Then the second pathway is for circularity. And in this case, the key questions are: how can we reorganize the process cycles to close the loops at all levels of the system? So from the primary production to the industrial patterns. What logistic and organizational patterns should be established? What business models should be encouraged? And how to integrate biorefineries into local economies? And the third pathways is related to restoring diversity. In this case, we consider not only biodiversity, which is hugely important, but also economic diversity, in the conviction that economic and biodiversity go together. So the questions are how to create value from biological and social diversity. How can diversity become a structural principle of food system? How diversity can be mobilized to achieve more resilience. And of course, in order to get to these pathways, we have to consider some priorities. And there are some cross-cutting priorities we have identified. So first of all, in terms of, let's say, paradigms, we consider the social innovation as a key driver for change. We need technologies, but social innovation is equally important to move the system toward the transition. And one key paradigm is agroecology, and it has been stressed also by the preceding speaker, and digital transformation, because it's something that it's going along all the aspects and the fields of research. But also, and in this case, we really learn from the COVID pandemic, we need to strengthen the capacity to foresight and to analyze the future. So we needed to improve the foresight culture at all levels of science and research, and capacity of coping with disasters, and also understanding the importance of finance for transition. All themes that now, with also the recovery plan and the Next Generation EU, are coming very high in the agenda. But let's say overall, it is important to understand to what extent research can contribute to well-being. And this is the, let's say, the overall cross-cutting priorities. But now I would like to pass the word to one of the other experts of our group, Sébastien Trier. Please, Sébastien, I will manage the presentation for you.
Thank you very much, Gianluca, and thank you for doing this for me. The next slide that I will try to explain to you is that we also have addressed the role of policy for the transformation that we need, and the need for policy-related research. In this report, I think it's important to understand that we consider that policies are key levers for the change that is needed, but they can also be factors of statu quo and lock-in, as I think Urs Niggli rightly pointed out. So knowledge and science can play a key role to inform the policies that are specifically designed to unlock the transition, but the knowledge and science are also really needed also to question the pre-existing policy framing, the incoherence between policies, and also to propose paradigm shifts in existing policy making. So I have 4 points here that are basically that, of course, this is not all the research we need, but some of the research we need needs to be devoted to methodologies and data to evaluate the coherence between policies, for instance, on agriculture, health, environment, and the diversity of objectives among the SDGs. But it's also about the fact that we need what we need is a food system transformation, which we believe as the experts in the group, which would necessitate a food system policy. And this is a new policy frame to question the lock-in and to trigger transition. And that needs to question key policies that have been and are still major drivers of food system evolution, and not always driving the system in the direction that is needed to stay within the safe and just operating space. And I could name just a few that we have discussed in the way that we should rethink the impacts that they have on the food system, for instance, the competition policy, but also the trade policy and the common agricultural policy. So I think one of the key elements that are actually extremely important is, of course, how can science help the alignment between the common agricultural policy reform and the Green Deal objectives, and in particular the farm to fork strategy, which is still an ongoing discussion that we need to have. The last point that I want to stress in this slide is, in many instances, innovative arrangements for food systems transformation are emanating from local authorities, and I mean regional level or city level, which includes public procurement, education policy, community-supported agriculture, innovation clusters, but also food processors and retailers that are regionally implanted, but even food banks for vulnerable people, for instance. And so we need to, this is absolutely key for transition, and we need to ensure that national policies enable the development and the outscaling of these innovative arrangements, and that can trigger transformation in the whole food system and in the supply chains. Could you go to the next slide, please, Gianluca?
Yes.
Thank you very much. In the report, we also have a specific discussion, because we were ourselves challenged by the crisis that happened while we were working. And I think we wanted to devote some time to lessons learned from the COVID. And the main lessons are, of course, on resilience and vulnerabilities of the EU food system and its links to the global food system. Basically, I think the main lesson here is the title of our report, which is about resilience and transformation, that both need to be discussed and achieved jointly. There are different key aspects of resilience that we need to look at: the capacity to anticipate shocks, the capacity to cope with shocks when they are there, but very importantly, the concept of transformative resilience, to align crisis management with the long-term goals that we have just discussed. And in order to be sure that the transformation we operate are able to reduce our vulnerability to crisis, you have seen that the three pathways for transition that we have emphasized on diversity, equity, circularity, this is all about building also in our system more resilience, which can mean, for instance, redundancy. That concretely comes at a cost if you build a system that is redundant. But what we believe is that now that the crisis has happened to us, to our society, the cost of redundancy, the cost of resilience and diversity might seem reasonable, even in terms of the financial risk management that we need to have. So here I just want to emphasize that there is this is exactly the center of our report, to building transformative resilience and not just resilience. And to have resilience and transformation. And that's a key element to have in mind when we are discussing the EU recovery plan and the national scale, the national member state scale recovery plans. So that, it's a key moment when this transformative resilience needs to be factored in. I would like now to go to the next slide, please, Gianluca. I think beyond the specific research priorities, building on the specific research priorities for each of the transitions that Gianluca has introduced, I think we have overarching principles for research policy, so that we can be sure that that research can be transformative in itself and that it can contribute to overcome lock-ins rather than continuing the existing lock-ins. And so we have put the focus on 5 major principles. First, directionality, giving all stakeholders that are all important innovators in the food system a horizon for transformation that is a common horizon for transformation. This safe and just operating space that is defined by the SDGs, and I think this is absolutely key for Europe, the capacity to align European scale, European Commission scale, and member state scale coordination in the research and innovation policy. So I'm linking here directionality and alignment, our first and fifth principles. We also insisted on responsible research and innovation. The link of innovation with its consequences is absolutely crucial. How will innovation unfold and enable a transition pathway? This is exactly the center of our report on transition. How will it change lives and business and societies? For instance, if you look at the deployment of biomass for energy, to what extent it can either trigger diversification or more specialization in different regions. We have examples in Germany, in Ireland, in France that show that depending on the type of innovation and its conditions of deployment, we can reach either scenario of either specialization of diversification. And this is exactly crucial that innovators can think about and envision how the deployment in territories will unfold, the deployment of their innovation. And in that regard, responsibility and impact go hand in hand. I would like to link the 2 last principles that I've not mentioned here, openness and collaboration, because what we look at in the different research priorities that we have emphasized is that we need, of course, interdisciplinarity to go across silos that are imposed by either academic or bureaucratic settings, but also we need to involve all stakeholders, to include even citizens in research. And the issue of open innovation is also to look at the capacity to have open access to knowledge and to data. And in this regard, the role of public funding for research and innovation is absolutely key. So these are the 5 principles that we believe are extremely important if we want to develop those research priorities for transition to unlock the transition. We have now a last slide. If you can transition to that last slide, thank you very much, Gianluca. That is really to look at the implementation of these research policies with regard to the existing instruments that are developed in the European Union in terms of research policy, both at EU scale and in member states. The first point we want to emphasize is the key role of science policy society interfaces. And you see here the emphasis on saying it's not just a dialogue between science and policy making, it's also including society. I think it's very important at the global scale, and we have seen the importance of those science to policy interfaces like IPCC, IPBS, and that's going to be extremely important ahead of the UN Food Systems Summit and the 2 major COPs on climate and biodiversity at the end of the year. But I really want to emphasize the role of knowledge as a trigger, enabler, and as a necessary condition for policy change that we have emphasized. In that regard, at the EU, at the national scale, at the regional scale within the EU, science, policy, society interfaces are extremely important to reinforce the specific legitimacy of science in public debates, while at the same time not substituting to political choice. And I think after the crisis, we have understood that this is extremely critical. On partnerships, which is really the heart of EU research and innovation policies, we have seen that there are at least 12 partnerships of the current policy that are extremely important to build up research and innovation policies between public and private players, between local and national players. But I want to emphasize specifically the fact that in the European Innovation Partnership on Agriculture, but also in the European Innovation Council, and particularly its Pillar 3 on territorial localized innovation systems, in the existing policy labs and living labs, we have a lot of wealth of capacity to look at how territorially we need to develop those innovation systems if we want to recircularize, to re-diversify, and to have a regional development patterns for bioeconomy that that is actually a mosaic of diversified regional territorial innovation ecosystems. And in that regard, I think we need to keep in mind for the debate that the picture that we are proposing as a vision for the innovation system is actually quite different from a vision of smart specialization, because here we have smart diversification actually in what we propose. Two last points. The one emphasis that we have in the report is on long-term R&I networks. The issue of long-term is absolutely crucial, because we need long-term partnerships to ensure that there is trust between stakeholders for a collaborative approach, but also trust in order to risk the transition. And this trust is absolutely key to accompany change in regions and territories. We need to have a long-term perspective, and that's something that needs to be built in the instruments for research policy. Lastly, international collaboration. Food systems transformation and the Green Deal is not about the EU going sustainable without caring for other regions in the world to reach Agenda 2030, or even worse, it's not thought to be going sustainable in Europe at the expense of other regions. That's not at all exporting unsustainability is not at all what we are advocating for in this report. We are so globally interdependent that what we need to have is a research and innovation policy for food systems transformation that should be considered a global common good. And it's important that to state that, because we are at a time where both we have a new impetus for cooperation. We saw that with the dynamics ahead of the Climate Ambition Summit last Saturday, with many regions, and even before the United States came back to a cooperative approach. But we are also in a world where we are competing. I mean, the race to zero emissions, for instance, is something where regions, economic regions that have committed to carbon neutrality are actually competing quite harshly, and we see that between the EU and China. But if we want humanity and the planet to stay within a safe and just operating space, the food system is one of the few critical transformations we need to operate, and we need science, research, and innovation to be one of the key levers of a cooperative action globally, even if we have a lot of competition. And publicly funded research by member states and by the EU play a central role in that regard, and this is why we need to, I think this report is extremely important. Thank you for your attention.
Well, thank you very much, Gianluca and Sébastien, for that presentation, summarizing the huge work that has been done with this foresight exercise. As Gianluca was recalling, it's a collective work involving a lot of experts, and we are grateful to all the team for producing such a stimulating and interesting report. So we have some questions in the chat. It's very good. Please carry on using the chat so that your questions are conveyed to the speakers when we are in the discussion sequence of this conference. So without further delay, now I would like to ask our member of the Foresight group. So we have the Foresight experts doing the Foresight exercise, and we have the Foresight group. It's a group of member countries of SCAR orientating and supervising, if I may say so, the Foresight exercise. So now we have two members of that Foresight group, Elke Saggau, who is the chair of that Foresight group, and Elke belongs to the Federal Agency for Agriculture and Food in Germany. And then we'll also have Stefano Grando, who is a policy expert at the Italian Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Forestry Policy. And they both are going to present the SCAR position paper on this, or reflection paper rather, on this foresight exercise. Elke, you have the floor, and then Stefano.
Yes, thank you very much, Pascal, for the introduction and the handover to the SCAR Foresight Group. The SCAR Foresight Group consists of 7 SCAR colleagues from different European member states. And the main task and challenge of the group is to translate the SCAR Foresight results into research and policy advice in order to consolidate and to strengthen the SCAR foresight advisory rule for member states and for the Commission. And as a final result, this reflection paper will be transformed into a declaration. And this will be called Berlin Declaration. And the Berlin Declaration will be sent to the European Council. This in general will highlight and underline the importance of SCAR as strategic advisor in the area of the primary production and also the food systems and the wider bioeconomy. Today, my colleague Stefano Grando and I will provide you with background information on the foresight process and the second section on the key messages of the reflection paper and the way forward. Next slide, please. Foresight, what does it mean? Foresight means forecasting and looking to the future for decades. The term foresight described activities as such critical thinking concerning long-term developments and providing really food. And with our exercise, we have really. Another point is the detection of trends and emergent issues, creating recommendations for research and policy, including priority setting, shaping the future, especially by supporting public policy and offering policy information, advice, and facilitation. In general, foresight is an instrument for strategic planning and public policy building. Next slide, please. So there is the question, why are foresight so important today? Yes, the population will increase to at least 9.5 billion in 2050. And more food, water, energy, fiber, and also fuel is needed, which caused increased demand of food and biomass linked to resource scarcities and climate change. And of course, the new speed of change and shorter time for action, sometimes only reaction, we have to prepare for unaccepted developments. And interconnected crises will arise, followed by political decisions. And the current COVID-19 crisis is a very good example for that. Yeah, we are directly now in this situation. And there are strong interactions among environmental, social, and economic systems. These increases uncertainties and risks about the world food situation and also about the international security. In particular, there is a need for transformation towards new food systems. And for SCAR, the foresight process and the foresight report is a pillar. Foresights are the basis of SCAR to create strategic political advice for the member states and commission, and also for the entire research area for Horizon 2020 in the past, and also, as already mentioned by Sebastian, in the future for Horizon Europe, with its new instruments as like partnerships and strategies, for example, the farm to fork strategy or the bioeconomy strategy, and of course for the implementation of the Green Deal. Since 2007, on the next slide, 4 foresight exercises have been carried out. The first one on climate change and energy, a second one on resilience and crisis, a third one on resource scarcities and transitions. From my point of view, this was the important one we have on board, the most important, and a fourth one, a more political one on primary sector and the bioeconomy. And of course, all studies are still relevant, and member states and the Commission are well advised to continue using them. Important activities have been carried out on the basis of the studies. For example, the awareness or the GPI function as well as the development of the European Innovation Partnerships as one main outcome of the SCAR ACES group. And then the question arises, why was it necessary to have a fifth SCAR site? Next slide, please. The main challenge of the fifth SCAR foresight is really to fulfill requirements of the Paris Climate Agreement and the UN Sustainable Development Goals. The aim is to reach good living conditions for all by using less resources and to reach resilient and sustainable European food systems within the planetary boundaries. This was the reason that the fifth SCAR foresight was launched in 2008 to explore the interaction between transition pathways towards a safe and just operating space. And of course, also this exercise is looking into the future until 2050. Of course, SCAR will develop activities on the basis of the outcome of the fifth SCAR foresight exercise. And on this stage, I would like to hand over to my colleague Stefano Grando. He will present the key messages of the reflection paper on the fifth SCAR 4 exercise. So, Stefano, it's your floor now.
Thank you, Elke. So after this presentation and introduction to the overall process and the overall aim of the work we have carried out, we now dedicated the last minutes of this presentation to the SCAR Foresight Group reflection paper. So to the reflection paper that we developed on the base on the work carried out by the experts. This first slide introduces the rationale, if you will, the structure, the very basic structure of the reflection paper, and the rationale behind it. As you can see, after, of course, an introduction, we dedicated the three central chapters to to a process of reflection on the three steps, connected steps. The second chapter, the second section, is dedicated to a reflection to the transition and to the three transitions that the experts have identified as shown before by Gianluca Brunori and then by Sébastien Traillet. So a reflection on what do these transitions mean in regard from our point of view, from the point of view of the policy of the member states. And the third section reflect on one step behind. What research is needed to trigger this transition, and these three transitions in particular, but more generally the transition towards a safe and just operating space. So which kind of research can help support this transition? The following section is another step behind. Which policies do we need? Which research policy we need for to support, to encourage, to fund, to steer this research that will help to achieve the three transition. And in particular, of course, the role of EU research policy was at the base of our reflection. And we made some reflections, some recommendations with the role, highlighting the role of SCAR and in general, all these arena for confrontations that we have in the European Union and with the Commission. These reflections, in particular the central part of the report, ended up with the identification of 10 key messages that have been then reported in the executive summary, which is not so a kind of really summary of chapter by chapter of the reflection paper, but just introduces and highlight these 10 key messages, which is what we are focusing now in the last slides. You see here the first 5 messages. I won't comment, we will rapidly get through them, reading, but then I won't comment, of course, word by word. I will try to highlight some aspects and probably also some critical aspects that we would like to stress. In general, I can say that these suggestions, these messages, some of them are more innovative or maybe provocative. Some others are more echoing a kind of wisdom that we already, of course, have. But it's important probably to reaffirm and maybe to update some elements that are already on the floor, already on the table in these years, but maybe framing and looking at them from a new perspective. So the first message says that a research policy capable of triggering an effective and inclusive transition towards a safe and just operating space is optimal, is needed. And we all agree on this. But then reaching agreement among European partners for a common vision to build this new system is needed, also to facilitate a commitment to reform policies. So the idea is, we want to highlight, is that this common vision helps the commitment of member states and of any kind of public body, of course, and also on the research side, this to reform the existence. And of course we can agree in general, but of course agreeing on the desired future is already a challenge, and even more, the challenge is when we look at the transition pathways that present sometimes trade-off conflicts, maybe winners and losers in the midterm, and agreeing on not only on the final end, but on the pathway is really a challenge, and we want to stress this point. But we need this because once achieved, this agreement can help also to overcome resistances, maybe legitimate resistances to change, but nevertheless we have to somehow to manage and to overcome. Last point, of course, the situation, the reality always change. This means that agreement on a common vision is never achieved forever, but is, with a trendy quotation now, like democracy, is a process, is an act, is not a state achieved once forever. The second and the third messages, maybe I can comment together, just getting through them quickly. Given the complexity of the challenge, systemic and multi-actor approaches in research have to be generalized and strengthened. They are already, of course, present and used, but they have to be generalized and strengthened. And the third is, says that the research has to build on systemic game changers. It must be open, inter and transdisciplinary, impact-oriented, based on long-term evaluation, long-term assessment, long-term vision, and capable to reframe policy problems. So, the second message highlight again the importance of a systemic view, the interconnectedness of all the processes that we want to shape or at least to influence through research policy and through research. But it's not only about interconnectedness, but we have loops, lock-ins, emerging effects that we must consider in the research to be, and also, of course, in the research policy, because they really represent the complexity of the systemic transformation. And to work towards the future, to highlight future elements to work upon, we have to, and researchers have to identify game changers, those events, those processes, those facts that can be really game changers, they can shape the future. Of course, this transformation can be hard to implement if we don't identify the correct game changers. And this can be they can represent crucial opportunities to grasp if we're able to detect them. And this requires long-term vision, long-term commitments, and also the capability to reframe sometimes, to change paradigm, to reframe the problems. Sometimes identifying new events, new facts, and identifying their possible role requires changing the lens we use to see the reality. So to change paradigm. The fourth and fifth messages, again, can be maybe commented together. The territorial dimension is crucial for guiding research design, while recognizing that also regional levels are appropriate for a manageable circular approach, and in more general terms, for the implementation of the research results. And the fifth says that social consequences of innovation adoption must be at the core of the research. Well, together with these two recommendations, reminds us that research and innovation is a co-evolution process between theoretical and technical knowledge on one side and geography and society on the other. Also the solutions must be developed together as much as possible with communities and territories. And this is on the process side. So the co-design of the research, the co-design of the solution. But then also, in any case, they must be flexible enough to be adapted in scale and in form at a variety of local conditions. This means having always an eye at the complex interface between society and technology in broad terms. So this is, again, I think, we think that this is a very important aspect, territory and society to be considered, both in the process and in the implementation phase. Then we have messages from 6 to 8. They are sometimes, to a certain extent, connected by a red thread, as we will see. We say that directionality should always be applied to research policies. European Commission and national governments should steer research and innovation towards radical transition for the benefit of public goods, also across borders. This directionality is one of the key principles highlighted in the experts' report. And again, we can agree on this, but with directionality in which sense? Well, the identification and the pursuit of public good is, of course, a key star to follow, to give us a direction. And this directionality means also the capability to account for, to represent on our side as also policymakers to consider goods, collective goods that are not always capable to represent themselves in the public debate, in the public arena. Of course, other interests, completely legitimate, hopefully, they are capable to represent themselves, private interest and also some public interest. But in some other cases, this is not the case. So directionality towards public good means the capability to identify and to give voice to these interests and to balance them with the other interests that are capable to present their needs and also in particular their research needs. One of these public goods is mentioned indirectly in the 7th message. As the COVID-19 pandemic shown, enhancing food system robustness and resilience should be one of the priorities for future research and in turn for the policies supporting it. Well, system resilience, food system and in general social system resilience is one of these public goals, if you like. Not always capable to represent itself. Why? Because it's important to remember that events that are unprecedented or maybe just unlikely are not impossible, but they can occur. And we had very dramatic examples this year. But investing in research for preventing, mitigating, adapting to these events can be not so easy before the crisis occurs, because of course it's easier to it can be easier to invest in research that address more urgent, already present needs. Nevertheless, here again we have to balance and to invest in research to increase to resilience of the system, even if sometimes this can be at odds or at least there can be certain trade-offs with other legitimate goals and research needs. And an asset for resilience is diversity. Diversity of varieties, species, farming system, food processing methods, supply chains. So diversity at all levels. We say that this is what makes Europe special and acts as a source of social, economic, and ecological resilience. This diversity should be respected and strengthened while promoting alignment and harmonization of research policy. More diversity means more richness, more options for doing things, and more variety of things to do. This gives also not the system, as we said, more resilience, and also can make people less vulnerable to shocks, crises, and other adverse events. But again, we face here a reality in which mainstream thinking, but also the day-to-day competition can select short-term winning solutions, more effective solutions in the short run, and maybe reduce diversity. This is an important role for research to explore this diversity, possibly to protect and to nurture this diversity. And in some cases, this diversity can provide an array of solutions that we can take when needed, but nevertheless, in any case, it's an element of richness and also local resilience and social fabric. In relation to what we just argued, we notice in the ninth message that numerous other policies influence our societies. And the correct coordination of their design and implementation would strengthen their effectiveness in promoting transition towards a safe and just operating space. Now, we do not enter in discussion on other policies, let's say economic policies, trade, competition, and so on. But we just remind that research and innovation policy cannot effectively promote the transition if we don't pay attention to this coordination with the wider policy landscape, with policies that have the huge aim and the huge role to manage the present in the best way. And sometimes these can be not always facilitate transformation. So it's a matter also from the research policy to have a look and an interaction with other fields, other policy fields. And we go to the final, very final message, the SCAR in its position as a link between European countries and the Commission, and as a strategic advisor to both on agri-food research matters, has a key role to play going forward to support the transition and alignment of these policies at the European level and beyond. So this is just to record that the SCAR is crucial for discussion. It is a formalized body, part of the official, say, of the comitology, as well as others, but also detached from, to a certain extent, from direct funding or direct decision moment. So it's the good arena to explore, share new ideas before they are maybe implemented and developed into specific political decisions. So just to summarize in a picture, the four quadrants of this circle, the four helix, if you like, must go together on a priority setting for the future and on the search of the best methods, the best pathways to pursue these priorities: economies, politics, science, and society. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Elke and Stefano, for presenting the reflection paper of the SCAR. We have now had our three presentations, and there are questions and comments on the chat. So we'll start discussing. And the first question I want to convey to Urs. We have a discussion in the chat about organic agriculture and agroecology. My question to Urs would be, it appears that organic agriculture has lost its role as a model, as a standard for transform the system some years ago, because it was mainstreamed. And now we have to make agroecology the standard. That's what you say in the chat. So is it the case that when a movement, transformative movement, comes into the mainstream, it loses its transformative capacity?
Yeah, I think that's partly right. So when I started in organic farming, that was in the 1985, and there organic farming was a very dynamic standard, and it was all oriented towards its positive impact on soil fertility, on biodiversity, on the environment. And because of the market success, it has been very detailed, described and standardized and codified. And it's linked to very complicated negotiation globally, because each standard have to recognize each other, and it's a very strict certification system. This is very good for markets, but it's no longer a very dynamic, growing standard, looking at the possible impact on the outcome, on the environment, on all what we want to address as global challenges, and so I'm very keen to become involved in the formulation of a flexible environmental or sustainable standard. And I think that agroecology, as it is practiced now, both in research and also in policy in France, is a very good example to bring, because we also need to integrate the progress of scientific advances. We need to respect what we know better than what we have known 20 years ago. So I'm very optimistic that we could formulate a new dynamic standard of sustainability.
Okay. Thank you, thank you, Urs. That was very interesting. So we'll come back to you a bit later in the discussion, if you don't mind. But we also have questions, of course, for the expert, the Foresight expert group after their presentation. There was a question about, and Urs also mentioned that the consumer being very much in the driving seat of all that transformation. And there is a question about the relative weight of cities, big cities, and the rural areas. How to take account of also the priorities and the initiatives of rural areas if the big cities are in the driving seat as far as the consumer weight are concerned. So that could be answered maybe by Gianluca or Sebastian or Urs also, if they have an idea.
Yes, thank you, Pascal. I think that the first question related to consumers really addresses a key aspect of this foresight. And actually, this was already addressed in a past foresight when we considered that we should change the narrative from efficiency to sufficiency, considering that system change cannot occur if there is no behavioral change. So when we consider sustainable diets, we consider both change in production systems and at the same time a change in consumption system, which means not only change in consumers, but also on the messages that are sent to consumers. And this brings to consider the next aspect. Actually, when we talk about cities, we are talking mainly about food policies, considering the fact that almost, let's say, a majority of consumers live in cities or consume in cities. So we think that in the governance of food policies, cities should have an important role because they can organize the food environment, they can organize a lot of aspects related to education, health, food assistance, food security, etc. And they cannot be excluded. So far, they have not involved into any policies. But I agree with Alexia that at the same time, we have to consider also rural areas and the importance of rural actors in the process. But to a certain extent, in the rural development schemes, we already have rural areas involved in planning, etc., through community-based approaches. What we wanted to emphasize here that we have also to consider this important actor, cities, especially in relation to food and food policies. But maybe Sebastian has something to add.
Sebastian?
No, I just want to acknowledge the fact that we had in the expert group Jessica Duncan from Wageningen, and that she was a key expert in that discussion on how policy can be triggers of change. And I think what Gianluca is extremely right. One of the reasons why we emphasized cities was both that they are not so much involved, but to some extent, it was also about realpolitik, who has the power to change. And that gives a lot of responsibility to cities, to metropolises, so that they don't forget the link that they have with rural areas and that they should not just act for themselves. But if we want to change the food system, cities are a key player.
Okay, thank you. Another question about the foresight exercise came up by my old friend Uno Svedin about the path towards transition. Don't we overlook the tension lines, the deeply rooted tension lines that exist and that are rooted in our history and our fabric? And if we focus on transition paths, how can we take into account those deep tensions and deal with them? I don't know who wants to take on that one.
I will start, but I will also give the floor to the others. I think that there are several ones, and we saw during our conversations that there are a lot of tension lines. For example, between the idea of technology as the main driver of development or innovation as good in itself, and on the other hand, the idea that society should innovate and should carry out a social innovation. But I think that the core aspect, the core line of tension is to a certain extent still a taboo, is the issue of the level of production. So during our conversation, we identify some pathways in which if we want to achieve given goals, we have to take into account that some levels of production will have to be reduced. And this raised a lot of tensions because in the past, with the idea of sustainable intensification, it seems that the win-win solution was found. We have started to consider that in order to have the climate neutral system and achieve the goals, the safe and just, we have to also reconsider at least the redistribution of production at the European level.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wants to take the floor on that? Sebastian, yes?
I just want to raise another tension that was actually, I think, implicit in the way we presented it, but the issue of diversity that we put so much an emphasis on, and that was emphasized again by Stefano Grando, is actually something that is very full of tensions, because of a lot of the economic strategy in the food system is about massification, standardization, specialization. And that makes a lot of sense in terms of business strategy. And we advocate for the fact that there might be another strategy about diversification that could function and that would be more resilient and more performing in terms of staying within the safe and just operating space. So that's something that is a key tension on which we need to work. And the last one that I want to mention is, of course, and you will see that in the report, there is a lot of question of how innovation can question incumbents. And that raises a lot of question about the competition policy that I had alluded to. And that's something that I think, don't expect the report to be only looking at the beautiful changes that can be. We are also looking at all the things that prevent change. And that's why we advocate for these three pathways.
Right, thank you very much. We have now exhausted our time, but there are so many questions in the chat. It's a shame to cut short that discussion. So I will allow myself to raise two more questions, and then we'll go to the pause. One question to Urs and one question to Elke and Stefano. And I will start with that one, the question to Elke and Stefano. You explain the role of SCAR and the foresight exercises. How do you ensure, and what are the tools for SCAR to ensure that those exercises really have a transformative effect?
Yes, also in the past, we created groups under SCAR. For example, the ACES group. You know this, you are the chair of the ACES group, Pascal. And this is so important that we have SCAR members in this group to develop instruments and also input for the Commission and for Horizon Europe. And this was also, we took on board the ideas of the second SCAR Foresight exercise to create the GPI function. And this was also a great success in the future. And we take on board the recommendations, and then we will transfer this into real action under SCAR within different groups.
Thank you. Stefano, you want to complete briefly, if possible?
No, okay. I support what Elke said. Nothing particular to add.
All right. Okay, thank you. So now, if Urs Niggli is still with us, there is a question
Yes.
from his presentation, but that also concerns the other speakers. So whoever wants to take the floor on that is welcome. It's about the convergence of mindsets or the formation of a shared vision. Are there signs of this convergence of mindsets? Some would argue that, on the contrary, we are in a situation now where the discourse is being more polarized and the positions are being more polarized. So, what's your opinion on that, Urs, and maybe some other speakers?
Thanks, Pascal, for asking that question. I see that especially among scientists, and this is a very positive development, that the convergence has grown. I see that there about most of them challenges, important questions, and way how solutions should be approached. For instance, that we have to act, react, and to develop solutions within systems. This has become a common vision of most of the scientific community. So I see a lot of convergence there. And this is an extremely positive development. In policy, it might be a little bit different, because often the debate is hidden by disagreement of interest, also economic interest. And so in a way, I very much appreciate the approach of the OECD group, that we develop a completely new strategy of debates. So we always declare whether we have a disagree on facts, a disagree on visions, or a disagree on interests, that would make decision making and debates much more transparent, because we have many spillovers within these different categories of disagreement. So to lead an honest debate, that would very much help to come to a convergence of mindsets.
Thank you very much. How to agree on disagreements, that's good. So any other speaker wants to take on that subject? I don't know, otherwise maybe Sebastian, with your experience on international relations and policy dialogue at international level with IDRI, or Gianluca, or whoever wants to take on that subject, and we'll close the session.
Yes, if I may, I think we stressed a lot this issue of convergence. And actually this concept of science, policy, society interface is the instrument to overcome the polarization and to bring a forum where the development of discussion based on consensus framework and also on identifications of points of, let's say, divergence. But when a procedure for deliberation is activated, we see that there is a lot of advancement. In the political field, I will leave to Sebastian maybe, but I have the feeling that there is a new stage now in the political situation. So with the United States joining again the climate talks, I think that also the polarization for some years will be tamed.
Yes, Sebastian, you want to add something?
Thank you very much. No, I believe what I try to stress is that thanks to, as Gianluca said, thanks to the comeback of the US administration in multilateral sustainability talks, we will have a conversation. But I don't believe that the conversation will be completely easy. And that's where, of course, we need to have peaceful but critical conversations. And I think in that regard, the scenarios, the foresights, the visions by science are extremely important to try and have a structured political discussion where we don't all agree on the pathway to get to sustainability, because there are going to be disagreements, but we can discuss them in a structured and peaceful way.
Right. Thank you very much. Apologies to those who raise questions and comment, which we don't have time to convey to the speakers, but there will be some more time for discussion during the panel session after the pause. So now I propose we go to the pause, to the break. Please don't disconnect, stay connected, and we'll come back to you in 15 minutes. That is 25 past 11. Thank you for being with us. To the SCAR Foresight conference. I hope you had a nice break. During the break, there was a lively discussion on the chat. It's good to see those discussions, and we'll have now opportunity to carry on the discussion with the panel session that's starting now. Well, during the break, those discussions in the chat well, make me think we have 2 points that shouldn't be overlooked. First of all, there is fish. Never forget fish. When we talk about food systems, fish is there. It has to be taken account of. And also the wider bioeconomy. SCAR is competent for all those areas. And then another interesting issue was that there will be a new partnership on food systems. So it's important to see how this partnership on food systems can take on board the conclusions and the work of the foresight that we just heard. That's a very, very good point. We might be able to discuss that in the panel. So now comes our panel discussion. Some member countries were kind enough to accept to step in for this panel discussion. We thank very much the representatives of those 9 countries for stepping in and animating this panel discussion. So 2 questions were raised to prepare this discussion. 2 questions were raised and sent to the countries. The first question is to provide examples of national initiatives or activities illustrating one or more of the 7 cross-cutting issues highlighted in the foresight. We've seen those cross-cutting issues during the presentation. I will not come back to them, but that was the first question, activities and examples illustrating those 7 cross-cutting issues. The second question was about national policies and strategies, and how can those national policies and strategies illustrate one or more of the 3 transitions highlighted in the foresight. So the first question about activities and examples of initiatives, and the second more on the strategic and policy side. So we have decided to divide the participants, the 9 participating countries, into 2 groups. The group 1 will address the first question, and group 2 will address the second question. And we'll have a first batch of presentation by the group 1, the countries that belong to the group 1 for the first question. Then we'll have time for discussing those presentations. Then we'll come to the second group with the same procedure. They will present and then we'll discuss. And then hopefully we'll have time for a general discussion. This panel discussion is oriented towards the Berlin Declaration that was mentioned in the German minister's address. This Berlin Declaration is supposed to be, well, it will be presented to the SCAR plenary. That is to come, I think, tomorrow. And this discussion can be elements, can be something that can feed in the Berlin Declaration. So we have that in mind also during this panel discussion. So without further delay, we will start the presentations and discussion on the first group of countries. And by alphabetical order, we'll start with France, then we'll have Germany, then we'll have Greece, then Italy, and then Portugal. So France, please, you have the floor.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Chairman. And first, I wanted to thank the experts for the excellent job they did and their very inspiring report. And also thank the organizers for giving us the opportunity to share views and cross-fertilize today. So I would like to share with you 3 French initiatives that can illustrate several of the cross-cutting issues identified by the expert group. The first one is related to stakeholder engagement. In France, wine growers face a major issue in Grapevine Dieback, and I guess it's not specific to France. And a few years ago, professionals of the wine sector decided to join forces together with the Ministry for Agriculture in order to set up an ambitious public-private co-funded program. This is called the National Plan of Grapevine Dieback, and it's a very integrated multi-actor program with the French wine sector that goes from research and innovation up to dissemination and communication to the wine growers. And this is a very successful program, and really the strong involvement of both professionals and the ministry in the governance and in the funding of the program fosters the rapid uptake of innovations by wine growers. So my second example is related to having ambitious, impact-driven research programs. In the Foresight Report, the experts underline the need to be very ambitious on the goals that we should collectively pursue. Research and innovation have a very important role to play here. And last year, the French Ministry for Research launched a 30 million euros research innovation program, which is called Cultivating and Protecting Differently. It's a medium-term program. It's a 6-year program And its objective is quite simple, but very ambitious. It's to design pesticide-free cropping systems. And it will also support the work of the Alliance on Pesticide-Free Agriculture that Urs Niggli mentioned earlier. What I find particularly interesting in this program, and that I want to stress here, is that the program itself embeds a foresight exercise with an opening towards European experts, and also an impact-driven design of the project and a real-time impact assessment of the project and of the whole program itself. And so I think that this could also be inspiring for the missions set up in Horizon Europe, and especially for the Soil Health and Food Mission, of course. And then my third example is about innovation in teaching methods. And it also refers to the item about young influencers that Urs Niggli mentioned earlier. So 6 years ago, the French Ministry for Agriculture launched a program called Teach to Produce Differently in its vocational agricultural schools, and especially in the 190 educative farms all over France. The objective of this program is to embed agroecology as a driver for the agricultural educative system, so that the future generation of farmers are able to integrate uncertainty and complexity, to develop capacities to observe, to design new solutions based on natural processes, and to experiment them. And we are convinced that it requires a totally new way of teaching, and in which all the learners and the education community are involved, and that's what we implement in this plan. Now, we've done a lot of progress, and just a few figures after 6 years, and here you see on the map that the vocational schools are disseminated all over France. Now, 75% of the agricultural surface of these educative farms are managed with organic farming. 70% of the farms do not use glyphosate anymore. About 30% of the farms have zero pesticide experimentation. And really all this progress was made thanks to active collaboration between learners and the educative community. Well, that's it for the initiatives I wanted to share with you, and I'll be happy to discuss them further later on. Thank you.
Many thanks, Franz. Many thanks, Marion, for this presentation and highlighting the education component of all that. That must not be overlooked. Now to Germany. Would Hartmut Staub take the floor, please?
Yes, thanks a lot. Pascal, the slides, please. I would like to share with you some ideas of how to make more efficient use of research activities for the transformation of the agriculture sector. First of all, I would like to thank the Foresight Group for the very, very impressive work, and especially for Urs Niggli for this really convincing presentation. So we spend in Germany in the Ministry of Agriculture around 160 to 180 million on research projects every year. And next slide, please. The objectives of our research are one point is to have a good advice for political decisions, and the second objective is to initiate knowledge to transform the agriculture sector towards more sustainability while being still profitable and producing sufficient output. The traditional indicators of successful research activities are often the number of submitted and accepted proposals and the amount of committed funds. Next slide, please. So we don't think that these indicators are very helpful. So we try to develop new elements of successful research activities. And that are close networking of the projects in a thematic call, a close monitoring and analyzing of research activities and outputs, identifying new knowledge gained and remaining knowledge gaps, and transfer and dissemination of research results to multiplicators and users. And we need feedback from end users to the program owner to adjust our next program better to the needs of the farmers. So our instruments we want to develop are the evaluation of research projects, transfer activities, and in the last step then working in living labs. Next slide, please. So we have one example where the call on projects for the mitigation of greenhouse gas emissions by smart manure management. We started with a call for projects and granting them. Then we had the very close coordination and monitoring of projects during the implementation period. We had a lot of workshops between the researchers in the project, the administration, the advisory service, and the farmers to look for the applicable research results and research gaps. And then we formulated in these workshops recommendations for farmers and for politicians. We also defined research gaps to be addressed and follow up research. The next step would be maybe within the next partnership, in the partnership on agroecology in Horizon Europe, to implement the research results in living labs to test them in real conditions. What we expect from this improvement is that the policy understands better the farmers' needs and that farmers accept political decisions because they have been involved in the decision making. Thanks a lot.
Many thanks, Hartmut, for this presentation and for keeping the time. That is very important. So we had a nice presentation on research policy, which was taken on board by the Foresight exercise, and how this research can be more impacting and these new interfaces between research and society. Thank you very much. Now to Greece. Would Lucia take the floor, please?
Thank you very much. Can I share the screen, please, to show my presentation? Okay. Agri-food sector is of increasing importance for the Greek economy. In 2017, the value added produced by the primary sector and the food and beverage industry amounting to 6.6% of GDP compared to an average of 3.5% in the EU, and respectively, in employment, the percentage of employees employed in the primary sector and in the food beverage industry is estimated at 14.9 in 2019, 1 year ago, compared to an average of 6.6% in EU of 27 countries. This means that more than twice in Greece. Greece has significant comparative advantages in agri-food sector, which is based on the diversity of the country and the consequent variety of agricultural species, the favorable natural conditions in the lowlands, the quality and nutritional value of a relatively wide range agricultural products as olives, grapes, fruits and vegetables, and in internationally recognized food traditions. Do not forget the Mediterranean diet. But we have also some structural weaknesses. The small size of agricultural holdings and this small area of farms leads to low level of use and new technologies and low productivity. That means that we have low integration of new technologies and equipment. This also leads to low productivity. And for these reasons, there is a strong dependence on subsidies. So farmers need the support with subsidies. Finally, there is an insufficient vocational training and more or less an unfavorable demographics. The relatively old age and the low level of education characterize the employees. This means fewer possibilities of integration of new technologies and innovation techniques. The Farm to Fork strategy, which is part of the Green Agreement and aims at the transition to sustainable food systems. Research and innovation will be a key driver for the implementation of the strategy, and this is a priority for Greece. The biodiversity strategy with an horizon of 2030 will operate in parallel with the strategy from Farm to Fork and the Common Agricultural Policy. And the implementation of these strategies in Greece will pose new challenges in the coming years. At least we hope that this will be done. Our policy proposals are the growth of farms. The growth of farms is a key step for the modernization of farms. The improving of human resources. It requires the systematic conduct of training programs that are specialized in modern developments in the field of agri-food. Strengthen the collaboration with universities and the research community. Internationally, agri-food innovation has strong momentum. In this direction, the measures that lead to a stronger environment of startup in the agri-food sector are very important, as well as the fullest possible utilization of the EU knowledge and innovation system. It is also crucial to increase the added value of agri-food products. Reducing cost and increasing productivity can be achieved with proper plant protection management, selection of certified seeds of high quality, lower cost for agricultural equipment and fertilizers, and efficient irrigation and techniques such as co-cultivation. And finally, we need the better connection. We plan the better connection of the agri-food sector with tourism. The interconnection of these two important areas can be made closer with mutual benefits. The presence of distinct Greek food products, preferably branded, but in any case, at least recognizable, can significantly increase sales, not only in hotels, etc., but also in visitors who return to their country. I finished, thank you.
Many thanks, Greece. Many thanks, Luca, for this overview. That was a very nice overview of the situation in Greece and with the concrete activities planned. Thank you also for keeping the time. That's very important. Now we come to Italy with Serenella Puliga. Serenella, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you. Okay, thank you, Stefano. Maybe you needed to present. Okay, thank you so much. So here we wanted to give just some example of national activities about the general two of the 7 cross-cutting issue highlighted in the Foresight. Not focusing just on the research. I mean, that is the general background, but this is to show the connection at the level of society and at the level of other policies for food. We choose a food well-being and society. So we give examples considering that Italian agri-food system is a high-quality food production linked to the territory. So we have a network as a cluster. We promoted a network as a cluster, which are public and private partnership at a national and regional level, including companies, public and private research, university, and so on, and are focused on the 12 national research program priorities. 2 out of the 12 are on food, so cluster Clan Agri-Food and Blue Italian Growth about fish and coast activity. So this activity include all actors to improve economic and sustainable growth. Other activities related to food well-being and society could be promotion, education, and information on products and the nutrition. So we issue guidelines for healthy nutrition and diets that are regularly updated, and the last issue is in 2019, and is issued by National Research Council for Agriculture. Sorry, please. Okay, thank you. And other important campaigns to promote healthy, sustainable, organic, local food in school canteens and public refectories. So in the public school, we have food consuming of with the public food procurement, organic food. So resources, financial resources are devoted to use organic food in the schools. And also we have a different kind of campaign as a fruit in the school and milk in the school. So as you can understand, the crucial attention is given to the Mediterranean diet, planning a specific also organization structure to enforce a linkage among diet and primary production issues. So in this idea is improve awareness of the population and educate a new generation for an healthy and high quality diet for healthy life, considering also the richness of the territories. Please, the next one, where we wanted to focus, Stefan, okay, thank you, about social innovation. So many initiatives at local level and working at the interface between rural and urban, like local urban food policies, plans, council pact, real pact, and alliance through different stakeholders, both for metropolitan areas and for smaller towns and rural territories. Sometimes these activities start from different sources, for example, from research project, for which activities of territorial brokerage and multi-actor engagement is included. Also, food district has been implemented to enforce a linking in the food chain and lands. And this is represent a social innovation to make more aware of the population about and linking and link much more the local, the territory, and the consumer. And in general, we have the specific aims about the new programming of research of the national research program. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Italy, for this nice overview too, and illustrating two of the cross-cutting issues. It was very clear. So now we go to Portugal with José Matos, who has no slide presentation. He will make his presentation orally. Thank you, José. You have the floor.
Okay, good morning, everybody, and congratulations to the organizers and to the speakers for this wonderful conference. So I just want to share with you a few examples of what we think is successful activities in Portugal. And one of them is starting with the food and well-being. So we had a project for the Portuguese food value chain in fishing, which is comprising fish production, canning, and trading associations, promotes and enhances the quality of sustainability of the fish consumed in Portugal, assuming itself as a privileged interlocutor or broker, if you want, with the various institutions and with the consumer. So breaking the bridge or breaking the gap. On social innovation, we have a very interesting project, which is called Ugly Fruit. So the main goal is to reduce the tons of good quality food that are thrown back to the land by farmers every year, and also to prevent the unnecessary use of resources on their production, such as water, arable land, energy, and working hours. By changing consumption patterns, this project intends that in the future, all quality fruits and vegetables are marketed equally, regardless of their size, color, and shape. Alongside this local impact, we hope to raise awareness of the population to the food waste problem, as well as the fact that ugly food can be of good quality, which enables people to have access to food that is cheaper and produced locally. On agroecology, we have interesting project in soil. One is it's called Info Soil, which is an app, informatic app developed to set information on analytical data from horizons or layers of soil profiles. This information was made by compiling diverse bibliographic sources previously spread among several institutions, and also the EU database Lucas. On digital transformation, we have an example of an interesting project, which is the translation of it is Feed the One Who Feeds You, and promotes consuming local products using short distance markets. This is an excellent idea of cross-cutting and including digitalization. And also the Portuguese digital auction for fish market, and we've been talking a lot about fish here, and of course in Portugal half of our frontier is the Atlantic Ocean, is a new system for selling the catch via the internet, being an alternatively to the traditional physical presence auction. Enables direct participation in the fish auction in real time and from anywhere that has internet access, opening new windows and business opportunities to produce and marketing fresh fish from the auctions of mainland Portuguese ports. Also, I would like to share with you one initiative that has been since 2017. We established research and innovation strategic agenda for the agri-food, forest and biodiversity sectors, but at the same time, the Foundation for Science and Technology introduced a new instrument for boosting research, innovation, and valuing knowledge by creating co-labs. Co-labs are collaborative labs, are non-profit private associations or business companies whose main goal is to create directly or indirectly qualified jobs and science jobs by implementing research and innovation agendas aiming at increasing economic and social value. We have now, it was already founded 11 of these collabs, one for valuing mountain products, which called collab More, integrated of forest and forest fire management, called Forest Wise, competitivity and sustainability of vineyards and Portuguese wines, called collab Vines and Wines, technology and green products from the ocean, called Green Collab, intelligent farms, bio-based innovative solutions for protection of cultures, Innov Plant Protect, cellulose for sustainable and smart applications, research and innovation in biorefineries, innovation in the food industry, the collab for food, blue bioeconomy, and strategies for innovative foods for sustainable animal production, the collab Innov Feed. And last but not least, we also have two very important operational groups about soil. One is called More Soil, and the other is called Go Soil. And these are also very, very challenging and interesting operation groups that have been working very, very hard, and that has been given very good results. And this is only a few examples that I would like to share. So Pascal, I'm sure that I made it in time. And if anybody wants to know more information about any of these projects, please contact us and we'll send you all the information we can. Thank you very much and good luck for the rest of the conference.
Thank you, José. Dead on time as usual. Great. So we had beautiful presentations by the first group of member states. It's not that easy to have a discussion on the content of the presentation because they were very diverse. And after all, it's a wealth because we like diversity, we know. But I would like to ask one question to each of you, and you take the floor when you like, on the interface between research and policy in your country at national level. How are the ministries interfaced with the research system at national level to ensure that those activities, those policies you have mentioned are facilitated? And also, if possible, to describe how this interface also makes room for other stakeholders like the farmers or the consumers or citizens. So this is the question I would like to put to the representatives of the first group of countries, and you take the floor as you wish between Marion, Hartmut, Lucia, Serenella, and Jose to describe this interface between policy and research and maybe other stakeholders to implement the activities, to facilitate the implementation of the activities you have now described. Who wants to take the floor?
So yes, I could take the floor. Thanks a lot for this very interesting question. In Germany, our ministry has a very, very big research sector within the remit of our ministry. So we almost 30% of the research activities or the research capacities in Germany belong to the remit of our ministry. So we have a very, very close contact with the research. So what we lack a bit is, and I try to make this clear in my presentation, is to get the farmers, the end users, the advisory services more involved in making research activities on one side, on the other side, to get more information, more feedback from the end users, so that we really do not research for research's sake, but research for people. And I put a lot of into the new Horizon Europe framework in the partnership, especially the partnership on agroecology and living labs. And I hope very much that we can, via living labs, getting much more results into the practice, and also a better feedback from the farmers to our research programs. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, and thank you for bringing Horizon Europe into the picture. Of course, that can be a factor of facilitating those interfaces. I see France. Marion, you want to take the floor on that question?
Yes, please. Thanks for these questions. It's a quite complicated one. I would say that in France, there are several levels of cooperation with the various actors related to the research and innovation policy. First, the other ministries involved, because the funds come from the Ministry for Agriculture, the Ministry for Research, and sometimes from the Ministry for Environment. So we have a close collaboration all together, for instance, regarding the our national action plan on reducing risks related to pesticides. We have a program, a research program, and it's co-chaired by the ministries for agriculture, for environment, for research, and also for health. So that's with the other ministries. Then with we interact with research funders to make sure that they have our policy-related research priorities in mind, and that they will fund programs related to those priorities. And we have strong interaction also with research organisms. And recently, a new institute was created in France, which is INRAE. Before it was INRA on one side and IRSEA on the other side. And a main innovation in their organization is that they created a Directorate General dedicated to expertise and support to public policies. So at the moment, we are building the interaction with this new DG, and I think that it will really help to facilitate knowledge transfer from research to administration, to my colleagues who build policies, and also a better uptake by research of our daily needs related to public policy support. And also we have we engage with a link with the stakeholders, agricultural stakeholders, that is true through our national program for agricultural and rural development, where we have a committee where, for instance, professional organizations are, and we discuss what kind of projects we will fund, and we have a very strong attention to building multi-actor programs. And then I would say that a last example really related to SCAR is our national SCAR Mirror Group, in which we invite French experts in the SCAR groups and also people from the ministries for agriculture, for research, for environment. And I think that's also a way to share information, to share views, and to have that kind of interface.
Okay, thank you for that nice description and also the update on the evolution of these interfaces in France. Would anybody else? Yes, José, you want to?
Yeah, Pascal. Okay. Well, starting with the mirror groups in Portugal, we have a SCAR mirror group, which I must welcome some of the elements that are also attending this conference because they were invited, and we discuss always the issues that are being mostly discussed in SCAR meetings, and so we take inputs and we share the conclusions of the discussions in SCAR. Since Portugal has been involved very strongly with the promotion, creation of a bioeconomy strategy, there is a very good link between ministries. On one hand, Ministry of Science, on the other hand, Minister of the Oceans, and Minister of Environment, and of course, Minister of Agriculture. And they have been working very, very close because they have got also shared responsibilities, for example, in forest, which is linked between agriculture and environment. And so there's quite a good collaboration going on. And I also must share that the Minister of Agriculture has recently released a program called Future Land, which is a 10-year program to 2030 with very, very specific deadlines, with goals of reduction of pesticides and also other elements in agriculture. And with this strategy, there's being prepared a network for innovation, and which includes 24 labs and living labs throughout the country, and they are very much involved in this task of going towards a modern agriculture. So things are looking very promising, and let's hope that there's no things like COVID-19 getting in our way. And I'm sure that we will discuss about the success of this within the next meetings of SCAR. Thank you.
May I?
Yes, sure. For Greece, thank you, José. Now Greece.
Thank you. In Greece, as far as I know, research will be oriented to our priorities, both national and European. And as I told you, agri-food sector is one of our priorities. It was the last 10 years, and as far as I know, also it will be in the new programming, the new structural funds 21-27. So there will be some keywords. For example, the modernization of farms will be one of the keywords in the agri-food sector, how to modernize the farms. This means that the new call for proposals or the new projects should be given emphasis in this thing, how to modernize the farms. And another emphasis will be given to strong research environment, more money, more programs to support a stronger research environment, and also to strengthen the collaboration with the universities, research community, and industry. Finally, there will be special initiatives about the labeling of products. I think that is strongly correlated with the added value given to products, and also with the tourism. As far as you know, tourism is one of our, it's a big, heavy industry for Greece. So the agri-food sector will be strongly correlated with tourism. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this update about Greece.
May
Yes.
I add?
Yes, Italy.
Yes. Okay, thank you. So I wanted to add that about the linkage among stakeholder and the research and the activity which needs to root in the real agriculture sector for us. We in Italy we carried out a national research program which is led by Ministry of University and Research, but a wide comparison and discussion is among different institutions related on research for different sectors to arrive to a national program agreed on. And this kind of program now is running for the next 7 years and is already under a national public consultation. So the final document was given to the national public consultation, and so is an institution at the institutional level the wide consultation, and also at public level and consumer level in some way. So in this kind of discussion, we stressed the necessity to focus also the economic aspect and local aspect about the primary production for agri-food chain and fishery and aquaculture and so on, considering the real condition of economic and social and environmental sustainability for the farming. Just to get the most appropriate instruments to have an enabling environment to exploit and to the potential of farming, considering the linkage with the territory, and also promotion of the job and social inclusion in the rural area. So all these points related to agriculture and specifically for agriculture system, specifically also for a small and very small enterprise. As you know, in Italy we have a situation quite particular for this kind of producer that are the most part of our production, and are also related to the multifunctionality of the lands in the inland area and in mountain area. So all these points are very related to the real to the situation of farming and the managing of the territory, and this specific point must to be considered, and we ask for to be considered in the general program national research. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this review of the specificities of in Italy. Okay, so I think we can now shift towards the second part of this panel with the group 2 of countries. Answering question 2, I remind you, it's about providing examples of policies and strategies illustrating one of the or more of the 3 transitions highlighted in the Foresight report. And the first country by alphabetical order will be Belgium and Flanders. To take the floor, Isabel Magnus, please, if you will.
Yes, thank you, Pascal, for giving me the floor. I'm sharing my presentation. Yes. Okay. I want to introduce the Flemish food policy as a regional policy in illustrating two transitions. As you can see on the slide, we have 4 strategic goals in our food policy. We want to bring food transition into the heart of our society. The first seeds for this policy were planted in 2015, so you can see it takes some time, because in 2019 we got the political support. Food was anchored in the coalition agreement of the Flemish policy, of the Flemish government. There was an extra push. We had a Fit for Food 2030 policy labs in Flanders, where we worked together with a lot of stakeholders and make the research agenda. There was also the Green Deal. The Green Deal is running like a thread through this exercise. So we prioritized and made a timetable inspired by the Green Deal for this policy. And COVID-19 created a momentum in last year or this year for a quick start. On the next slide, I will show you how we will make it concrete. So we will work together with a lot of stakeholders. The traject is starting in 2021. We will work together with NGOs, farmer organizations, farmers, the food industry, retailers, schools, etc. There's also more cooperation in our own policy domain, like agriculture, because we make always a linkage between the CAP and the plans for farm to fork. And what's new, there's a cooperation in the Flemish government. So it's a cross-policy domain collaboration. We will work together on a Flemish food policy, and we have a network with policy advisors where we will work together. In 2022, the beginning of 2022, we will organize a food top where we can present an action labs and the first results. Why is it a good example? It's actually an answer to question 1 and 2. We will deal with several cross-cutting issues and work on two of the three transition domains. We work with a multi-actor approach, the stakeholders, as I mentioned before, and it's an integrated approach. So the silos between different policy domains disappear in this strategy. I have some examples on this slide. So we have the integrated research agenda. We will have a framework for sustainable food. We will have an integrated approach for schools, for the meals, for students at schools. We will also have an integrated approach for new food landscapes around cities and a Flemish protein strategy for shifting proteins. This is all. There's also a scientific advisory board who will advise us and the strategic research agenda. This is the story of the Flemish food policy in short. So I'd like to thank you for your attention.
Many thanks for your presentation on the Flemish food policy and its new developments. It was very clear. Now we go to Finland with Johanna Kohl, please, if you take the floor. Johanna, we can't hear you. Are you with us? Have you unmuted your microphone? There seems to be a problem with the sound system. We can't hear Johanna, and I can see she's not muted, so there must be a problem with the sound system. So I would suggest that we go to the next presentation to give time for Finland to fix the sound problem, I hope. So we can go now to Hungary with Barna Kovacs. Barna, are you here?
I am with you. Thank you very much. While I am sharing my slides, just let me thank you for the invitation. I am pleased to be here. I am very happy to contribute to this discussion. Actually, this part, when we are discussing about the three pathways, are one of the most important for me. It's one of the most important part of the experts report, while as we were listening, the different countries, they might have a different approach and there's a lot of disagreements on the different pathways. But for us, it was put in place three pathways which we should follow in the future to arrive to the safe and just system. And to show some examples from Hungary, and of course not just to enumerate the strategies, but a little bit to show some examples which was done already in Hungary. Let me just present on behalf of Hungarian Ministry of Agriculture that on the first pathway, healthy, sustainable diets for all. I would just emphasize that in 2011 there was a very much debated Hungarian regulation on the tax of public health products. Among others, the sugar content and salt content of the products was taxed with a high sugar content. I think that was a very interesting example, and not so many countries has such a regulation on taxing for the public health issues. I think Lithuania has at that time such a regulation. Then we have a regular promotion campaign to eat fruits and vegetables 3 times per day, which I also think that it's very important, and it's a policy issue based on a food policy strategy which we have in Hungary. Then let me just put another example from on the second pathway towards the circular food supply. The National Food Chain Safety Office has a special food waste awareness program, Wasteless named, and they were building up on the food waste policy and helping developing a school program. They were developing a good practice guidelines for entrepreneurs, and of course they have a research line on food waste generated by households, and of course we still miss some issues, and that's why we need also research to have accurate data on Hungarian industry on data on food waste, but we are working on that. Then another approach for the second pathways, I would say the cross-ministerial cooperation. In the Ministry of Innovation and Technology, with the help of SSIS EU financed the program, the ministry is a parent ministry for developing the National Circular Economy Strategy. And in this strategy, which it's just started to be built up now, there are a strong consideration to consider the bioeconomy, and of course by this the food waste and the food supply aspect. And then another strategy is under preparation. Is a parent ministry is the Ministry of Agriculture for the bioeconomy strategy, the development. And of course, what I should mention here that both ministries along research strategy and the planning the future, they are planning to invest into partnerships like agroecology and food system together with other countries in the frame of Horizon Europe. Then here I should mention also that in the context of the macro-regional cooperation BioEast, we have a foresight exercise which is very much linked with circular food system issues, and by this we would like to contribute for better framing the strategies to better contributing the future pathways which we have in our particular attention. And of course, on the third pathway towards a greater diversity, I would just very much emphasize it is important from the perspective of research and innovation, policy development and priority setting to mobilize along this pathway and to further develop key performance indicator on this issue. We start to put in place this, but still it's very difficult. It's our agriculture, it's a conventional agriculture, mainly conventional agriculture, main conventional forest system. So it's still a lot to do on that way, but we are on. And of course, what I would also emphasize here that the impact research driven research should pay attention to the pedoclimatic zones of Europe. Each climatic zones of Europe has its own particularity on diversity aspects. So what we are keen on to develop specific programs and also with the help of the EU programs and the EU policies to pay a specific attention that the impact should be foreseen on the different climatic zones. The strategy should be developed accordingly. I would stop here my short presentation. I hope it was understandable, and I would stop also to share my screen. I am available for the questions. Thank you very much for listening me.
Many thanks, Barna, for this presentation on Hungary. Very comprehensive and very clear. So I don't know whether Finland is back with us. I understand Joanna Cole was in the main room where she cannot unmute her microphone. So I don't know whether Joanna managed to move to the active room, but we'll give her some more time to do that, and we'll go straight to the next presentation by Poland with Paweł Chimiński. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Pascal, for giving me the floor, and congratulations to the organizers and presenters for this great event. I would like to give us some few examples of Poland's policies and strategies that will illustrate the three transitions that were highlighted in the SCAR Foresight. We start with one of the main strategies that was implemented in February of 2017. This is like the strategy of responsible development with the perspective up to 2030. And this is like serving as an umbrella strategy for a lot of initiatives and other sectoral strategies. And this is like the working through the system of integrated strategies. As you can see, we were very active in Poland in strategic planning in response to the lots of challenges that were described by the three transitions highlighted in the SCAR Foresight. So like in most of the strategies were adopted or updated in 2019. We have also like the one of the program running from 2014. So I would like to come closer and look at some subjects that were under the particular consideration within each of the strategy. So strategy of a responsible development for Poland, this is like the key strategy. It shows like the pathway of a development of a whole economy, and some of the strategic choices that were relevant for the agriculture and rural development are those related like the general increase in the social, economic and the territorial cohesion. But this strategy itself is aimed in promoting the sector of the high quality food. This is like the the program of enhancing the 10 strategic markets to become future engines of the Polish economy, the food markets, and also like the strategies focusing on the Polish food specialties. So like there were 12 pre-selected branches of processing to determine future competitive position of Poland. And also the great efforts are made to increase the support for the research, development and innovation, concentrating on 11 priorities. One of them is innovative technologies, processes, products of agri-food and wood sector. One of the main strategies concerning the food sector and like the bioeconomy itself is the strategy of sustainable development of rural areas, agriculture and fisheries. This strategy was updated in last year, and this is the main, let's say, sectoral strategy for agri-food systems. This strategy introduces the new models of organization of production and markets, like with the special emphasis on the short market chains and fair competition, but also promoting the schemes and like the new approaches for food quality and safety, and like, for example, the change towards the innovation, digitization, and like the creating the industry all in the food sector. And like a lot of other initiatives that are stressed under this strategy. However, like the big component of it is also the rural development with new business models, but also like the research and educational activities towards the change of the diets, like the sustainable and healthy diets for the social communities in the future. And the other very key document that was adopted in 2019 is like Polish Circular Economy Roadmap that draws the perspective for sustainable industrial production, so like including the waste, increasing the producer responsibility and other activities. Here we have also a strategy for more sustainable consumption, but also like the big emphasis on the bioeconomy development. So like the supporting also the framework conditions for this the development of the bioeconomy sector. The other example is a national environmental policy that puts attention on the sustainable water management, ensures like aims in ensuring biosafety, but also the enhancement of the biodiversity of the landscape, and also focusing on eco-innovation. And last but not least, this is just like an example. We would like to stress the strategic research and development program for natural environment, agriculture and forestry. This is BioStrateg program, which is like the huge multi-actor research base oriented towards the innovation and practical outcome, worth over 120 million euro research program that are aimed in getting together the research and the practice in the few sectors like the food security and safety, rational management of national resources, adaptation to climate change, but also protection of biodiversity, or like research in the field of forestry and timber industry. So like these are just examples of what we are doing in Poland for past few years, and this is like the path that we will follow in next years. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Poland. It was very illustrative of these transitions highlighted in the Foresight report, and it's nice to see how the national strategies fit in with those transitions. Okay, so now let's have a look, check whether Finland has
Am
joined.
I there now?
Yes, you are. It's your turn.
Okay.
You have the floor, please.
Okay. Okay, thank you. And if you could still share the slides. Sorry for the inconvenience. There was some login. First of all, I would already reflect back a bit of the Foresight report, what has been now launched, because I have been member of the Foresight expert group here, and so what's already ongoing in Finland. And Finland has, you can show the next slide, please. Finland has a phenomena-driven government program and has also set really high targets to be the carbon neutral already 2035. And therefore, we have different kind of activities ongoing, and one of those is Catch the Carbon Research and Innovation Program, which is just now open for calls of the researchers, and main purpose there is to utilize all the national knowledge of the foresighting, building a system level change map, what's needed via research and innovation, and also to take care of the holistic sustainability. And we are just now expecting a lot of research plans for that. And I would also emphasize there that one part of the Foresight study, just the launch, is the diversity part, and we took it also here. So change in the air is really like having the diversity on economics, the local aspects, the biodiversity, of course, but also the social and environmental. So all the package is there. And also one part of this is the nudging in land use. So without climate smart farmers, we don't get the climate smart agriculture or even the get to the targets of the carbon neutrality by 2035. It's about learning, education, knowledge sharing, but also tailor-made solutions for different purposes. So it's not like one fits all. And for that, we need different kind of long-term foresight, policy measures, new kinds of that, new kind of technologies, of course, should be also utilized. So that's what's ongoing, one issue at the moment. And next slide, there are then, next slide, please. Thank you. Sorry for the small text here, but two other issues which are also ongoing is low carbon roadmap study. Finland is well known about its capabilities of collaborating across the sectors and also engaging NGOs, industry, researchers, and the government also in local terms. And of course in Finland we have the forestry and the agriculture, and it's about the cross-sectoral targets we have to achieve to get there, that low carbon that we achieve the carbon neutrality. So these roadmaps have been made by 13 sectors together with different stakeholders and policymakers, industry. And it's really like a common action now that what should be really in concrete matters done, and who is doing what, and how much does it cost, and what are the activities in short and long term. So that's a major event has been done in Finland, and this is something that also I think it's a good example maybe to utilize somewhere else as an example how to collaborate tightly together with different sectors and utilizing also the multidisciplinary knowledge. And so I think that's also going to be translated soon in English. And then the climate-friendly food program is also at the moment ongoing. It is like a umbrella of different programs. It's a program, but it's like an umbrella which is engaging different stakeholders, the agriculture farmers, but also really to the end of the products, consumers, and taking them account and around the same table all over. And the target there is also to achieve the carbon neutrality and get the real good pilots and innovations and how to implement them it's also to co-create a future together with the farmers. What is, for example, carbon neutral farming or carbon farming in the future? So these are just examples what's ongoing, and for example, this having some roundtables. Okay, now they are virtual at the moment, but what is the plant protein roadmap or roundtable, and what is reducing the waste roundtable around that, for example, really going concrete with different stakeholders that's made in Finland, and really having all the, not only the short term and not only one separate sector and not only one separate like economics, but having this holistic sustainability, long-term perspectives and the transitions which should be made, and then the applied science utilized there. So it's the science based there, but how to apply it in a concrete world. So this is ongoing in Finland just shortly, and a couple of examples of that. And so thank you at this point.
Thank you very much. Again, some illustration of those transitions embedded in these policies. So that was very comprehensive and very interesting. Thank you for our presenters of the group 2. I would like, there is a bit of time left for discussion, not much, but I would like to raise one question for the panelists of this second group. Now we have Horizon Europe coming with notably the partnerships and the missions. So we would be very interesting to know in your country what arrangement is being made, or what is the position of the country concerning those new setups, the partnerships and the missions, and how the countries intend to participate in those new setups. So it would be interesting to have your opinion. Again, Belgium, Finland, Hungary, and Poland, but it's quite voluntary, so you take the floor as you wish. Hungary?
I can if you wish. So I already indicated also on my slides. Yes, it's a small country, and I also have to emphasize that we are still learning, so to say, the joint programming, how to cooperate and to participate better in joint programming activities. And the partnerships are an opportunity for us, and we are aware that all the identified partnerships are very important. They are they would be the pathway to follow, the priority pathways to follow and to contribute. However, it's very difficult because the budgetary issues, and actually here is the question how we can commit and where to commit our small amount of money. And of course, what I can confirm that in the case of agroecology, in the case of food system biodiversity, we see that it was a very good approach to establish national mirror groups to discuss along these issues, and we want to contribute to those partnerships and to participate. And of course, I would like to also to emphasize that we put in place a national mirror group on the soil issues, soil health issues. So we are also interested in the mission on soil and related actions. However, it's still difficult to see which part and how to contribute. And of course, as I mentioned here, not just that we have one agency actually who is dealing with the research resources, but also how we can combine the institutional budget, how we can bring in the different institutions into the partnerships. So we think it's a very good approach which was brought up by the Horizon Europe, by the impact-driven researcher, but it's we have the difficulty as a small country to catch on all the partnerships which were presented, and to put our resources into all of them. We should foresee how we can bring home the outcome, the impact from those partnerships. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Hungary, for this well, words of adhesion and also of difficulties. Okay. Is there anybody else from the second group who wants to take the floor on this issue of participating to the partnerships and missions? Yes, Finland?
Yes, thank you. I would just say that the mission soil, for example, that there is ongoing networking at a national level at the moment, and I think it's just great to build the network. So how to utilize the research organizations in tight collaboration with the ministries, but then also the connection to the Commission. And I think it could be strengthened, of course, but it was already great to have from Commission representative in our seminar and bringing the knowledge in that direction. But I hope in the future it could be more mutual then. So how to build it and get the national knowledge to the Commission is still maybe something to consider, and and how it's done. But I think Finland has been really doing a lot with the and started with the soil and food missions, and it's ongoing at the moment already, and but still what is expected and what is how to work efficiently, and Finland is also a small country, so that's of course also about choices how to make that, but at least those are functioning now at the moment well.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for stressing it has to be both ways. There is some exchanges on the chat about the mission healthy soil and food. Seems to attract a lot of attention and interest. That's good. Would anybody else want to step in? Yes, Poland.
Thank you very much. I would just like to stress the participation in a European partnership on food systems. We try to be quite a big put a bit strong efforts and take actively part in this one. For us, like food systems is one of the key aspects of the development of agricultural sectors. And like the challenge will be for sure the proper engagement of all stakeholders to deliver like good outcomes of it. So we see through the participation in the SCAR strategic working groups and like the working on the future European partnerships, that this is like the great possibility to be part of a transformation and this radical change that we have to introduce to the agricultural sector and like all the food chains. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Poland. Anyone else? Okay, I don't see anyone else want to take the floor on that issue. So we are now coming to an end to this panel discussion, which was very active, very fruitful. Thank you very much to all our presenters, all the representatives of the 9 countries who accepted to step in on this panel discussion, which was again quite interesting, I think. So now it's time for the concluding sequence. And I would ask Nathalie Soos van de Viver, who is Director for Quality, Research and Innovation and Outreach at the DG Agriculture and Rural Development, to take the floor for the concluding address. Thank you.
Thank you, Pascal. And dear participants of this 5th SCAR Foresight Conference, I'm really happy to be with you. And I must say I listened very carefully the presentation and the debate of this morning, and I can think that at Commission level we are sharing a lot of this analysis. So First of all, I would like to congratulate the SCAR Foresight Group and the expert for accomplishing this inspiring report, I must say. You have achieved the difficult task of spelling out and describing in an engaging style the most pressing challenges we face in relation with the way we produce, manage, and consume our food. And as you have stressed in your report, we need now a new way of thinking. Business as usual is no longer valid. If we want to collectively and efficiently tackle these challenges and achieve the healthy, sustainable and resilient food system that our society needs. And as you also said, the COVID-19 pandemic has highlighted the urgency to find these solutions. So this is also, of course, at the core of the Farm to Fork strategy presented by the Commission last May, and as part of the Green Deal, but also the strategy calls for new holistic system approach that take the three dimensions of sustainability into consideration: social, environmental and economic, and that address the needs of all actors along the agri-food value chain from farmers to consumers. So the huge endeavor calls for the joint efforts of many actors and also for the alignment of the different instruments and policies that affect our farming and food sectors. So that is two of these instruments are, of course, research, innovation. And I must say, when I listened this morning, the different elements was part of your debate. And so I'm really glad to see that the report's alignment with our vision in the Commission as we move now with the new research innovation program Horizon Europe. And John will also be part of this conclusion session. Will have the possibility to give more information on that. We have the 6 cross-cutting expected impact and 7 intervention areas of the cluster 6 of Horizon Europe, which concerns food, bioeconomy, natural resource, agriculture, and the environment. Really a good illustration of the manner in which we wish to achieve this impact. But it was mentioned several times this morning, it's the new approach for partnerships, and we mentioned different types of partnerships, and the idea is to pursue with broader scope partnerships to avoid duplication and to reduce the fragmentation in the EU research innovation landscape. One of the partnerships that the Commission has proposed under Horizon Europe is the partnership already mentioned, accelerating farming system transition, agroecology, living labs, and research infrastructure. And the goal of this partnership is to enable to grasp agroecological process from farm to landscape levels, by boosting place-based innovation and by improving the uptake of knowledge and innovation on agroecology across Europe. So research needs in this agroecology sector are big. More effort are needed to understand how it can help to solve different challenges in different contexts. So I'm particularly glad to see that the report identify agroecology as one of the areas we should focus on for a new agri-food sector. We also believe that the transformative power of co-creation. As you know, we have very successful tools, which is the EIP Agri, and we apply also on the Horizon Europe the multi-actor approach. During the debate, I can listen that it is also an important element for you. So the idea, of course, that will be on the Horizon Europe to develop, to improve again these two elements. What we want to do is to unite science, farming, and communities, as the Foresight Report underlines. And it's to involve several disciplines beyond agronomy and farm economics. And this is really at the core of Living Labs approach, and that we want to boost with the partnerships. And we need absolutely the close involvement of the member state for that. Just in the chat, there was an exchange concerning the new tools, which under Horizon Europe, which are the missions, and so the proposed mission Caring for Soil is Caring for Life, aiming at least 75% of all soil in the EU to be healthy by 2030. It's also a good example. With its building blocks include the testing and the deployment of solutions through Living Labs and lighthouses. And we need also to emphasize on education, communication, and citizen engagement. I will participate this afternoon in the meeting with the Mission Assembly and the Mission Board, and we will continue our work for this to be able next year to have this mission no more in preparation but in implementation. As you said, also it's important to align the research from one side, but also the different policies, and they have to go hand by hand. And of course, I am working in the Agri, so I would like to mention the Common Agricultural Policy, as we have recently achieved a big decision, a big steps in the reform process. As you know, in October there was the general approach at council level and the negotiating mandate in the parliament, and now we have started the trilogue, and it's really important for the preparation by the member state of the CAP strategic plans. At the end of this week, the Commission will adopt and send to the member state non-legally binding recommendation in which we have asked them to pay attention to addressing the targets of the Green Deal, the Farm to Fork, and the biodiversity strategies. It also, in this recommendation, we have also underlined that it's important to make use of the synergies between the proposed Horizon Europe mission, so just mentioned, Caring for Soil is Caring for Life, and the innovation, testing and demonstrating possibility it offers. And that will be also important to have this in the CAP. What is also an important element of this recommendation is the reference to the cross-cutting objective we have in the reform. It's the knowledge, innovation, and digitalization, and this emphasis the agricultural knowledge innovation system, the famous AKIS strategy, and that will be very important for the member state to introduce in the strategic plan what they can do for these AKIS elements. And we mentioned in the morning also organic. We are preparing the action plan for organic based on the comments we receive in the public consultation, which has just ended at the end of November, and will come with this action plan in the first quarter. So now it's really important to ensure that Horizon Europe and the CAP are linked in order to maximize this impact. So I would like to take the opportunity to thank SCAR Foresight groups and the experts for their visions and their guidance. And your advice as a SCAR is always welcome. And so it's a reference for the Commission when we are co-designing with the member states and all relevant stakeholders the different instrument under Horizon Europe. So thank you very much for that. And the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Soos van der River, for this very important concluding remarks. Now the floor is to John Bell, Director, Healthy Planet at the DG Research and Innovation. John Bell, you have the floor for your concluding remarks.
Merci, Pascal. Can you hear me? Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Natalie. I think Natalie's remarks and the way in which the work of SCAR and research and innovation are knitting together in the way in which our common agricultural policy is moving forward to drive sustainability, I think is a fantastic tribute to the work that you've been doing in SCAR since 1974. I'd like to thank you for this remarkable SCAR Foresight Conference as it comes to a close. We know that systemic changes requires systemic thinking. And I guess when we look at some of the difficulties we've been living through this year, we realize also that foresight is certainly better than hindsight. So the work of this conference, I think, is extremely heartening and very reassuring for all of the actors who are going to have to drive this great transition ahead in the years ahead. So as a joint exercise with very little time for preparation, co-organized with the BMBF in Berlin, and in these situations of this remarkably difficult year that we've all lived through across Europe, where we didn't have this great opportunity to meet in person in Berlin. I hope the invitation still stands for the future. We still managed to deliver what I think is an extraordinary landmark report and a landmark event in the history of agriculture and food systems in Europe. So I'd like to say herzliche Glückwunsch to our colleagues who have hosted us today and who've helped to keep this process on track. I'd like to congratulate the SCAR Foresight experts under the guidance of Gianluca Brunori and the SCAR Foresight Group chaired by Elke Saggau for their forward-looking report and the SCAR reflection paper. And I'd like to thank you, Pascal Bergeret, the moderator and co-chair of the SCAR ACUS Group and director of the Mediterranean Agronomic Institute, for keeping this very challenging conference on track, and to Urs Niggli for his inspirational keynote thoughts, which are based on his rich experience in farming traditions. So our fifth SCAR Foresight exercise spells out just how research and innovation in three specific fields, diets, diversity and circularity, can really take a new role in accelerating social, ecological and economic progress. The challenge in these elements is to reconcile the various aspects and dimensions of sustainability at the same time, but in very real places. How do we enhance environmental performance? How do we secure economic competitiveness? And how do we ensure a social fairness and a just transition, particularly in the countryside where a lot of these issues will bite? And this is part of the challenge, the great challenge of our century, which is to reconcile the constraints of our biosphere with the needs of the economy. The European Green Deal that you've heard about is, of course, this new narrative, this great transition that we must, as a union, across all the different geographies that we have, drive as a great transition towards a climate neutral Europe that's working within its planetary boundaries. And this has been confirmed again by the European Council last week, when climate neutrality has been agreed as the goal of the European Union, and indeed on just climate change itself, the Fit for 55 target for 2030 has been set out. And this crowns a year, for all the darkness of this year that we've been living through, the enlightenment that underpins the policies that have been rolled out, the Farm to Fork, on biodiversity, Horizon Europe that's just been signed off. All of this is building on the work of yourselves and the shoulders upon which we stand in our conference today. Commissioner Gabriel, in her forward to our report, Build Back Better, underlined this centrality in her message. There's a promise made across the European Union as we work together to rebound and recover and restore after this dreadful pandemic and its devastating consequences. That building back better is not simply a question of bricks and mortar. We need to start working on learning from the research innovation insights that we see today in some of the living life support systems that are central to the transition ahead. So we're fully committed to climate neutrality driven by green and digital transitions. The resources have been agreed in the last couple of weeks to be put in place. The greatest amount of investment in living memory, 1.8 trillion euros to help reboot our economy. And 30% of this will be allocated to climate related objectives. So it's clear that we cannot and will go back will not go back to business as usual, as Natalie has said, that the costs and the challenges of transition are of course big, and the cost of non-action is enormous and irreconcilable with the society we want to nurture and the alternative futures that would be ahead. So investing in the Green Deal, of course, is the right thing to do now, economically, environmentally, and societally, but it's time to begin. Now, the Green Deal is Europe's growth strategy to drive its full potential, and it's essential that the next generation EU investment drives a competitive sustainability. So we need to navigate, we need direction, we need to know what the road ahead requires, and this is where research and innovation, the work of your Foresight group, is critical. Research and innovation has to support the recovery and guide the opportunities and options, de-risk, demonstrate, pilot, and require, if you like, the kind of clarity as to what the choices involve across the 3 areas of sustainability. This recovery and resilience will require really a new way of using research and innovation to develop, de-risk and diffuse solutions and clean technologies, practices and value chains that will allow us to build resilience through biodiversity, natural ecosystems restoration, circular economy and climate adaptation. But it will require people and practices and living systems to work that transition through. A forward-looking, mission-oriented and impact-focused research and innovation agenda will power this Green Deal transformation in all of the areas that you've been talking about today. Horizon Europe has been signed off thanks to the great efforts of the German presidency. It will start in 2021 and it will show that we can mobilize research and innovation to set out on this great transition in these directions that have been identified as part of the transition for climate action and recovery. For that reason, we launched last year to get things moving the last call of Horizon 2020, the Green Deal call in September, a major cross-cutting call with a budget of €1 billion addressing the priorities of the Green Deal, signifying a massive contribution that research and innovation can make to getting this transition started and having the breakthroughs and setting the directions in this green and just transition. There are 2 horizontal areas in that call on strengthening knowledge and empowering citizens that will mobilize research and innovation to support a just transition, empowering individuals and communities to actively participate in the green transition. And many of these are the communities Natalie was talking about in the EIP, in the multi-actor approach. It's really about the people who are going to have to make this work for them in the rural and regional parts of Europe that will need to be involved. So these topics are critical because many of the challenges that lie ahead are not specifically technological, but also require profound adaptations in lifestyle and behaviour. And we really welcome the good news and the agreement of this budget for Europe, the multi-annual financial framework and the recovery package in the last few days. It's a really very enlightening end to what has been a very dark year. The additional funding has been provided for Horizon Europe thanks to the involvement of the Parliament and the Council in this discussion, reflecting the crucial role of research and innovation in the shift towards a clean, circular, competitive and climate neutral economy. And now we move from strategy to implementation, as we need to move from aspiration to realization, and the 2021 work programme of the Commission will take stock and plan ahead. In Horizon Europe, you know that we're at the very critical points in the interactions with our member states and associated countries in finalising the first work programme, notably in Cluster 6, where Natalie and I are co-chairing the process at the moment. And here we will support transformative change in the economy and society to reduce environmental degradation, to halt the decline of biodiversity, and to better manage these, our critical natural resources, while concretely serving the EU's climate objectives and centrally ensuring that food, nutrition and water security are available to us and our citizens. So with the member states, we'll implement these parts of Horizon Europe, and notably the partnerships and missions in Horizon Europe. In our Cluster 6, 8 partnerships have been identified. Natalie spoke about the one on the farming transitions in agroecology. I heard my Polish colleague talking about the importance of the food systems partnership. These partnerships are absolutely critical to work together to mobilize all of the research and innovation community across the European Union to accelerate our transitions and to optimize the benefits that knowledge can bring to those most affected by the transitions. We have one institutional partnership in the centre of the bioeconomy, the Circular Bio-Based Europe initiative. I was just looking at the outcomes there in the last calls, and it's very promising in terms of what research innovation is managing to achieve in all parts of Europe with all of the different resources at our disposal. There are 7 others as co-funded partnerships, 3 co-funded partnerships that will start in 2021 or 2022, and the others will start with the following work program. So in 2021 and 2022, they will be co-designed with the help of our colleagues and partners in SCAR. And in 2022, we should arrive at a partnership landscape which is convincing and attractive to our co-founders to invest with, and I think inspiring and supportive of the work we're going to have to go through to make things move. I would also note here that in the last few weeks, a new European research area policy has been set out by the European Union, and we're looking at areas in which the benefits of the research area could be piloted to support the transitions in different parts of Europe. And finally, to talk about our missions. Many of you have mentioned the different missions. Natalie drew attention to the critically important Caring for Soil is Caring for Life mission. Our missions, our 4 Green Deal missions, are proposed under Horizon Europe to foster ambitious long-term research and innovation in key areas. A climate resilient Europe, preparing Europe for climate disruptions and accelerating the transformation to a climate resilient and just Europe by 2030 is really about the adaptation challenges that are going to be fundamental to the risks that we've been discussing today across our food systems, dealing with weather, dealing with public health, dealing with decarbonisation, dealing with fragile ecosystems and so forth. Our mission Starfish 2030, led by Pascal Bergeret, restoring our oceans and waters, looking at the whole of the water system and how it interacts, whether it's the rivers or the sea basins or the oceans, in terms of how that can be restored with the support of research innovation. 100 climate neutral cities by 2030, by and for citizens, again part of this transformation, and the work on the restoration of the skin of the planet, our soil, at the centre of the Caring for Soil is Caring for Life. So a lot of these things are based on generations of research and innovation and thought, where SCAR has been a driving force in navigating us forward. Previous foresight reports would have helped to guide us here, and today, no doubt, the foresight report that we've been here to discuss will be part of that great tradition. And these missions will try to produce European public goods on a grand scale, acting as transformation platforms with citizens participating in the transformation and research and innovation supporting the knowledge that is needed to set these new directions. So, I mean, to conclude, I guess what we have to try and make sure, even in the virtual sense, with this wonderful report, that what happens in Berlin doesn't stay in Berlin, but it becomes part of the European lifeblood in terms of looking at how we're going to navigate the future. It's much easier when you're dealing with a transition to have some navigation points in the critical areas, and this is what this foresight report provides us. The 5th foresight exercise of SCAR will, of course, begin now at this conference and not end. We've had a very interesting discussion at the board of DG RTD with the report yesterday, and it has triggered a lot of thinking about how we can build on some of the orientations there. The SCAR plenary, of course, will discuss tomorrow the Berlin Declaration and follow up with the Portuguese presidency on the next steps. We'll work closely together with the Portuguese presidency on the development of council conclusions. And of course, a stakeholder workshop in the first half of 2021 is planned so that we can reconnect together with many of you. And let's hope that at some point we'll be able to do that in a physical form. So to conclude, as I started, this is a very important landmark report in the transition of the agri-food system, which is at the heart of our way of life in the European Union, and where so much depends on sustainability crossing those 3 areas of economic, ecological, and social needs. It's a systemic change. Systemic change needs systemic thinking, and systemic thinking and transition needs systemic foresight. And for this, we thank you again for this contribution, this stepping stone to this destination that we're all looking for, moving out of the darkness of 2020 and looking forward to being citizens of 2030, following the insights of foresight about sustainability and a better and brighter time ahead for us in Europe. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, John, for your concluding remarks, for the important considerations in this very special moment we are living. now on the eve of the new programmation. And this new period is full of challenges and promises. Now it's time to finish this conference. On behalf of all the organizers, I want to thank all presenters, all panelists for their contribution, and all the participants for their active participation in the chat. That was a very lively discussion, I hope. And now we are looking forward to the future and how all this can be implemented. Thank you again, and please stay in good health. Goodbye.